Welcome to Dark Harry. Today we bring you an unforgettable story. What if Harry Potter joined the Addams family and Wednesday took him to meet Enid? Hogwarts crossover. Loving our content? Smash that like button and join our family by subscribing. We truly appreciate each and every one of you. Now, let the story begin. Chapter 1, The Peculiar House on Grimmauld Place. Harry Potter was having a weird day, even by wizard standards. 6 months after the Battle of Hogwarts, and he still couldn't walk down Diagon Alley without being mobbed. The boy who lived twice. The chosen one. The savior of the wizarding world. Titles that made his skin crawl and his chest tighten with something between panic and irritation. Today he'd slipped out of his flat under a disillusionment charm, determined to investigate without the Daily Prophet trailing his every move. Something strange was happening near Grimmauld Place, and his aura instincts, even if he'd rejected Kingsley's offer to join the department, wouldn't let it slide. Definitely not normal, Harry muttered, watching his wand hand as the detection spell pulsed an ominous purple. The magic signature wasn't dark exactly, not like Voldemort's had been, but ancient and, weirdly gleeful. If magic could have emotions, this magic was cackling. He rounded the corner onto the street where number 12 used to stand before he'd abandoned it. Too many memories of Sirius. Too much black family darkness seeping from the walls. Harry stopped dead. Where number 13, Grimmauld Place should have been stood a Victorian mansion that definitely hadn't been there last month. The building loomed impossibly tall, with spires that seemed to scratch at the cloudy London sky. The windows glowed with an eerie yellowish light, and, was that a hand scurrying across the front gate? What the? Before Harry could finish, the disembodied hand sprinted up the fence, perched on top, and gave him a jaunty wave. Harry raised his wand. Not aggressively, just ready. Years of fighting dark wizards had made caution his default setting. The gate creaked open of its own accord. "I wouldn't do that if I were you," came a flat, emotionless voice from the shadows. Harry spun to find himself face to face with a girl about his age. Her skin was almost ghostly pale, her hair in tight black braids, and her dark eyes studied him with cold calculation. She wore a black dress that wouldn't have looked out of place at a funeral and held a loaded crossbow aimed casually at his chest. "Who are you?" Harry asked, not lowering his wand. "I could ask you the same question," she replied. "Especially since you're lurking outside my family's home with a stick pointed at our gate." "This isn't a stick," Harry said automatically. The girl's lips twitched in the ghost of a smile. "No, it's a wand. European craftsmanship, phoenix feather core if I'm not mistaken." She tilted her head. "You're that wizard from the newspapers. The one who killed the noseless man with daddy issues." Harry nearly dropped his wand in shock. "How do you?" A massive explosion rocked the ground beneath them. Harry instinctively dropped into a defensive stance as smoke billowed from an upstairs window of the mansion. The girl didn't even flinch. "Wednesday. Is that wizard still out there? Bring him in." "Your father blew up the conservatory again," a woman's voice called from inside. Wednesday, apparently that was her name, lowered her crossbow a fraction. "You might as well come in. Mother insists on hospitality, even for potential intruders." She turned and walked toward the house, clearly expecting Harry to follow. Against his better judgment, he did. The interior of the house was somehow both elegant and macabre. Weapons adorned the walls alongside what looked suspiciously like medieval torture devices. The furniture was antique and expensive, but Harry could swear the stuffed bear in the corner had just winked at him. "Mother, Father, our visitor has arrived," Wednesday announced as they entered what must be the living room. A tall woman with skin as pale as Wednesday's glided toward Harry. Her black dress clung to her like a second skin and trailed along the floor behind her. Beside her stood a man with slick back hair and a pinstriped suit, smoking a cigar and sporting a manic grin. "Welcome to our humble abode," the man exclaimed, rushing forward to pump Harry's hand enthusiastically. "Gomez Addams, and this vision of darkness is my wife, Morticia." Charmed, Morticia said in a voice like velvet. Her eyes, dark and knowing, studied Harry with interest. You must be Harry Potter. Harry tensed. How do you know who I am? The magical community is smaller than you might think, Mr. Potter, Morticia said with a slight smile. Especially for those of us who practice the older arts. Before Harry could ask what she meant by older arts, another explosion shook the house. This time, a bald man with wild eyes came tumbling down the stairs, his clothes smoking and his face covered in soot. Success, he shouted gleefully. 3 pounds of dynamite and just a pinch of wolfsbane makes the most magnificent boom. Uncle Fester, Wednesday explained flatly, believes anything can be improved by making it explode. A philosophy I heartily endorse. Gomez declared, slapping the bald man on the back. Harry found himself smiling despite his confusion. There was something oddly familiar about this family's chaos. It reminded him of the Weasleys, if the Weasleys had been obsessed with death instead of muggles. A massive, groaning figure appeared in the doorway. Nearly 7 feet tall with a pallid complexion and sunken eyes, the butler, Harry assumed, carried a tray of drinks. Ah, Lurch. Perfect timing. Bring our guest a drink. Gomez called. Lurch groaned something unintelligible and shuffled toward Harry, offering a glass filled with a bubbling green liquid. It's not poisoned, Wednesday said, noticing Harry's hesitation. Unfortunately. Mother doesn't allow poisoning guests until after dinner. Wednesday, darling, don't tease our visitor, Morticia chided gently. Mr. Potter, please, have a seat. I suspect you have questions about the magic you detected. Harry carefully sat on a Victorian sofa that seemed to sigh beneath him. How do you know about magic? Are you wizards? I've never heard of the Addams family in Britain. We're not British, Gomez explained, puffing his cigar. We're American. Just relocated temporarily while our mansion back home undergoes some renovations. Pugsley's volcano experiment was more successful than anticipated, Wednesday added. We've been practicing magic since before your ministry existed, Morticia said, gracefully taking a seat across from Harry. The Addams family follows older traditions. Magic that doesn't require wands or Latin incantations. Harry frowned. But that's not possible. The ministry monitors all magical activity in Britain. Wednesday let out a sound that might have been a snort. Your ministry couldn't detect our brand of magic if we performed it inside their offices. As if to demonstrate, she snapped her fingers, and blue flames appeared dancing above her palm. Wandless magic? Harry asked, impressed despite himself. Not wandless. Different magic entirely, Morticia corrected. Our magic comes from blood and bone and ancient pacts. It's in our very essence. The disembodied hand that Harry had seen earlier scuttled into the room and jumped onto Gomez's shoulder. Ah, thing. There you are, old man. Did you finish unpacking the library? Thing gave a thumbs up. You have a pet hand? Harry asked weakly. Thing isn't a pet, Wednesday said sharply. He's family. Harry felt his face flush. Sorry, I didn't mean, no offense taken. Gomez declared cheerfully. We're used to people being startled by our peculiarities. But you, my boy, you're peculiar yourself, aren't you? Survived death twice, if the papers are to be believed. Before Harry could respond, the front door burst open, and 4 people in aura robes stormed in, wands drawn. Ministry of Magic. We've detected unauthorized magical activity at this address. Harry stood up quickly. Williamson, what are you doing here? The lead Auror looked surprised to see him. Potter? Stand back, sir. These individuals are performing unregistered magic. Uninvited guests for dinner. How marvelous! Morticia exclaimed, seemingly unbothered by the wands pointed at her family. Harry stepped between the Aurors and the Addamses. There's been a misunderstanding. They're not doing anything wrong. They're performing unregistered magic without ministry-approved wands, Williamson insisted. That's 3 violations of the statute of secrecy. Actually, Harry said, feeling strangely protective, they're practicing ancestral magic that predates ministry regulations. According to the Magical Heritage Protection Act of 1743, traditional family magics are exempt from standard restrictions. Everyone in the room stared at him. What? Harry said defensively. Hermione made me study magical law after the war. Said I needed to know my rights. Williamson looked uncertain. Even so, we need to confiscate any dangerous magical artifacts and register these individuals. I think not, Morticia said softly, rising to her feet. The temperature in the room seemed to drop several degrees. The Addams family has existed for centuries without ministry interference, and we will continue to do so. The disembodied thing, suddenly appeared on Williamson's shoulder, making the Auror yelp in surprise. What is that thing? That's thing, Wednesday corrected flatly. The Aurors backed toward the door as Lurch groaned menacingly and Uncle Fester produced what looked like a homemade explosive from his pocket. Wait! Harry shouted. Nobody needs to fight. Williamson, I'll vouch for the Addams family. They're not causing any harm. Potter, you don't have the authority, maybe not officially, Harry interrupted, but I think Kingsley would listen if I told him you harassed an ancient magical family over a cultural misunderstanding. Harry didn't usually play the fame card, but he wasn't about to let the ministry harass this strange family just for being different. He'd had enough of that kind of prejudice to last a lifetime. Williamson hesitated, then lowered his wand. Fine. But they need to register their residence. We'll handle the paperwork tomorrow, Harry promised. After a few more tense moments, the Aurors left, though not without suspicious backward glances. Once they were gone, Harry turned to find the entire Addams family staring at him with varying expressions of surprise and, in Wednesday's case, reluctant approval. That was unexpected, Morticia observed. Why would you defend us, Mr. Potter? Harry ran a hand through his perpetually messy hair. I guess I'm tired of the ministry deciding who gets to practice magic and how. After everything that happened with Voldemort. I've seen what that kind of thinking leads to. Gomez clapped him on the back so hard Harry nearly fell over. Spoken like a true Addams. We've always believed magic belongs to everyone, the stranger the better. Do you live nearby, Harry Potter? Morticia asked. I used to. My godfather's house was, nearby. Number 12. Harry pointed vaguely in the direction of the now abandoned Grimmauld place. The noble and most ancient house of Black, Wednesday said, surprising him again. We found their family grimoire in our library. Distant relations, apparently. Harry blinked. You're related to Sirius. All the old families are connected somehow, Morticia explained. Magic calls to magic across generations. A crash from upstairs interrupted them, followed by childish laughter and what sounded like something heavy being dragged across the floor. That would be Pugsley with his collection of medieval maces, Wednesday explained. He's trying to build a catapult to launch them at the neighbor's cat. Perhaps you should supervise, Wednesday dear, Morticia suggested. We wouldn't want a repeat of the Cincinnati incident. Wednesday nodded and headed upstairs without another word. Left alone with Gomez and Morticia, Harry found himself oddly comfortable despite the strangeness of the situation. There was something refreshing about their open embrace of the macabre and unusual. Mr. Potter, Morticia said, fixing him with her intense gaze, I sense you're at a crossroads in your life. Unsure of your path forward. Harry shifted uncomfortably. She wasn't wrong. After defeating Voldemort, he'd expected to feel something. Relief. Purpose. Instead, he felt adrift, watching as the wizarding world slipped back into its old patterns of prejudice and bureaucracy. The magical community here doesn't quite know what to do with you now that you've served your purpose, do they? Morticia continued, her insight uncomfortably accurate. They want me to be an auror, Harry admitted. Or a Quidditch player. Or a spokesperson for whatever cause needs a famous face. But what do you want? Gomez asked, surprisingly serious for a moment. Harry shook his head. I don't know. I've spent so long just trying to stay alive that I never really thought about what comes after. Morticia and Gomez exchanged a look that seemed to contain an entire conversation. We'll be in London for several months, Morticia said finally. Our home could use another magical presence, especially one who understands the local authorities. Are you offering me a place to stay? Harry asked, confused. More than that, my boy. Gomez exclaimed, suddenly animated again. We're offering you family. Adventure. A chance to explore magic beyond those restrictive school lessons. We have a spare dungeon that would make a lovely guest room, Morticia added with a slight smile. Harry should have been running for the door. These people were strange, possibly dangerous, and definitely not what the wizarding world would consider respectable. Instead, he found himself smiling back. I'd like that, he said, surprising himself. Though maybe not the dungeon part. Wonderful. Gomez clapped his hands together. Lurch, prepare the East Wing guest room. The one without the quicksand. Lurch groaned in acknowledgement and shuffled away. As if on cue, Wednesday returned, dragging a boy of about 13 by the collar. The boy, who must be Pugsley, had the same pale complexion as the rest of the family but with a rounder face and a manic gleam in his eye. His clothes were singed and he carried what looked like a stick of dynamite. He was trying to make the maces explosive, Wednesday explained flatly. I stopped him before he could light the fuses. Ah, Wednesday. It would have been epic. Pugsley complained. You can blow things up after dinner, darling, Morticia said gently. We have a guest. This is Harry Potter, and he'll be staying with us for a while. Pugsley's eyes lit up. The wizard who killed that Dark Lord guy. Cool. Can you show me how to do the killing curse? Pugsley, Morticia chided, you know better than to ask such things before dessert. Harry choked back a laugh, unsure if they were joking. The next few hours passed in a blur. Dinner was an elaborate affair with dishes Harry couldn't identify and didn't dare ask about. The conversation jumped from medieval torture techniques to explosive compounds to ancient magic with dizzying speed. Wednesday occasionally offered sardonic comments, while Pugsley asked increasingly alarming questions about Harry's adventures. By the time Lurch showed him to his room, thankfully not in a dungeon but a Gothic-styled bedroom with a four-poster bed similar to the ones at Hogwarts, Harry's head was spinning. As he unpacked the few belongings he'd brought with him, a soft knock came at the door. Wednesday stood there, arms crossed, studying him with that same calculating gaze. You don't know what you've gotten yourself into, she said without preamble. Harry shrugged. Wouldn't be the first time. The Addams family isn't like your wizarding friends. Our history is bloody. Our magic is wild. Our idea of a good time would give your ministry officials nightmares. After Voldemort, I doubt much could shock me, Harry replied. Wednesday raised an eyebrow. We'll see. She turned to leave, then paused. I attend a school called Nevermore Academy. It's for outcasts, werewolves, sirens, gorgons. Things your ministry would probably regulate or exterminate. Sounds interesting, Harry said honestly. I'm returning there next month for an alumni weekend. Mother and father think you should come. Me? Why? Wednesday's lips curved in what might have been a smile on anyone else. Because, Harry Potter, I think you need to see that there are more kinds of magic in the world than what your little stick can produce. With that cryptic statement, she disappeared into the shadows of the hallway. Harry sat on the edge of the bed, trying to process everything that had happened. Just this morning, he'd been avoiding reporters and feeling trapped by the wizarding world's expectations. Now he was staying with a family that made the love goods look conventional. He pulled out his wand and studied it. The elder wand was hidden away, and he'd repaired his original phoenix feather wand after the battle. It felt right in his hand, familiar and comforting. But what Wednesday had said stuck with him. More kinds of magic than what his little stick could produce. After everything he'd been through, the idea that there was still magic to discover, still mysteries to unravel, was exhilarating. For the first time in months, Harry felt something like anticipation stirring in his chest. From somewhere in the house came the sound of an explosion, followed by delighted laughter. Harry smiled to himself. This was definitely going to be interesting. The next morning, Harry woke to the sound of something scratching at his window. For a disoriented moment, he thought it was Hedwig, before the painful reality hit him again. Never Hedwig. Not anymore. Instead, a raven with unnaturally intelligent eyes perched on the windowsill, tapping impatiently with its beak. When Harry opened the window, the bird dropped a rolled parchment onto his bed and cawed once before flying off. The letter was from Hermione, and her neat handwriting filled the page with worried questions. "Harry, where are you? Ron and I went by your flat this morning and it looked like you hadn't been home all night. There are rumors at the Ministry about you confronting some unregistered magical practitioners near Grimmauld Place. Please tell me you're not getting yourself into trouble again. Also, I've been researching those magical anomalies you mentioned, and I've found something interesting. There are records of an ancient magical family that practices magic outside Ministry jurisdiction, the Addams family. They're mentioned in some of the oldest texts in the Department of Mysteries, but no one's reported a sighting in Britain for centuries. Be careful, Harry. Their magic isn't like ours. Love, Hermione. Harry smiled at her typical thoroughness. Trust Hermione to research an obscure magical family the moment he mentioned strange magical readings. As he dressed in yesterday's clothes, he'd need to go back to his flat for more soon. Harry considered how to respond. He couldn't exactly tell her he'd moved in with the very family she was warning him about. She'd apparate over with a rescue party. A knock at the door interrupted his thoughts. "Breakfast is ready," Wednesday announced when he opened it. "Though I should warn you that Grandmama is cooking." "Is that bad?" Harry asked cautiously. Wednesday considered this. "Depends on how you feel about Eye of Newt as a seasoning." She led him down the winding staircase to the dining room, where the family was already gathered. An elderly woman with wild grey hair stood over a bubbling cauldron in the corner, cackling to herself. "Harry Potter," she exclaimed when she saw him. "The boy who lived. Come, come, try my special toadstool and mandrake omelette." "Grandmama," Morticia said smoothly, "perhaps our guest would prefer something more conventional for his first breakfast with us." "Nonsense," Gomez declared. "The boy defeated a Dark Lord. He can handle Grandmama's cooking." Harry, who had eaten everything from Hagrid's rock cakes to whatever the Dursleys had deigned to give him, accepted a plate with what looked like a normal omelette, if normal omelettes occasionally pulsed with an inner light. Surprisingly, it was delicious. "This is actually really good," he said, earning a delighted cackle from Grandmama. "The secret is in the nightshade," she told him proudly. Harry decided not to ask if she meant actual deadly nightshade. "We need to register your residence with the Ministry today," he reminded them as he ate. "I promised the Aurors." Gomez waved a dismissive hand. "Bureaucracy. Red tape. The bane of creative living." "Nevertheless," Morticia said, "we should comply with the local customs, dear. We are guests in this country, after all." "I can go with you," Harry offered. "Make sure there's no misunderstanding." "Excellent idea." Gomez jumped up from the table. "We'll make a day of it. Tour the Ministry, terrify some officials, get our paperwork stamped." "I'm coming too," Wednesday said unexpectedly. When everyone looked at her in surprise, she added, "Someone needs to make sure Father doesn't challenge the minister to a duel." "That was one time, Wednesday," Gomez protested. And the French minister was asking for it. After breakfast, Harry wrote a quick reply to Hermione, explaining that he was fine and would meet her soon to explain everything. He deliberately left out the part about moving in with the Addamses. Some things were better explained in person. As they prepared to leave for the ministry, Harry faced a dilemma. How exactly did one bring the Addams family into the heart of wizarding bureaucracy without causing a riot? We should probably use the visitor's entrance, he suggested, eyeing Gomez's pinstriped suit, complete with a sword cane, and Morticia's floor-length black gown. And maybe try to blend in a bit. Wednesday raised an eyebrow. Blend in? We never blend in, my boy. Gomez declared proudly. Addamses stand out. We revel in our uniqueness. What your father means, Morticia translated, is that we will behave with decorum, but we will not pretend to be something we are not. Harry sighed. This was going to be interesting. They took the underground to central London, drawing stares from every muggle they passed. Gomez seemed fascinated by the subway system, declaring it marvelously tomb-like and asking detailed questions about fatal accidents that made nearby passengers edge away nervously. Wednesday, meanwhile, sat silently beside Harry, occasionally making observations that were both insightful and disturbing. That man is contemplating murder, she remarked, nodding toward a harried-looking businessman. You can tell by the way he grips his briefcase, white knuckles, positioned for a potential swing. Maybe he's just having a bad day. Harry suggested. Wednesday looked at him pityingly. Optimism is a character flaw, Harry Potter. By the time they reached the telephone booth that served as the ministry's visitor entrance, Harry was both exhausted and oddly exhilarated. The Addamses approached everything with such enthusiasm, even things most people would find horrifying or mundane. This is it? Gomez asked, examining the phone booth. Ingenious disguise. Much better than our Congress of Magic, they use an abandoned asylum. So obvious. Harry ushered them into the booth, which was a tight fit with 4 people. Ministry of Magic, visitor entrance, he told the receiver. The cool female voice asked their names and purpose of visit. Harry Potter, Gomez Addams, Morticia Addams, and Wednesday Addams, Harry replied. Here to register a magical residence. 4 badges slid out of the coin return slot. Harry simply read, Harry Potter, Ministry Business. The other 3 read, Visiting Magical Practitioner, Non-Standard. Non-Standard? Morticia read her badge with amusement. How delightfully judgmental. The booth began to descend, and Harry watched the Addamses' reactions. Gomez was practically bouncing with excitement, while Morticia maintained her elegant composure. Wednesday looked bored, but Harry caught her eyes taking in every detail. When they emerged into the ministry's atrium, the usual hustle and bustle momentarily paused as people turned to stare. Harry Potter, the wizarding world's reluctant celebrity, accompanied by 3 of the most unusual-looking people ever to enter the ministry. Ah, bureaucracy. Gomez inhaled deeply as if savoring a fine wine. The smell of parchment, ink, and crushed dreams. This way, Harry said quickly, leading them toward the reception desk before Gomez could make any more loud observations. We need to go to the Department of Magical Residency. As they crossed the atrium, Harry spotted a familiar figure hurrying toward them. Harry! Hermione called, her bushy hair bouncing as she rushed over. She stopped short when she saw his companions. Oh! You must be, the source of the magical anomalies. Hermione, this is the Addams family, Harry introduced them. Gomez, Morticia, and Wednesday. They've moved into a house near Grimmauld Place. Enchanted to meet you, my dear. Gomez seized Hermione's hand and kissed it enthusiastically. Harry tells us you're the brightest witch of your age. Hermione blushed. Thank you. I've read about your family in some ancient texts. Your magical practices are quite fascinating from a historical perspective. Historical? Morticia raised an elegant eyebrow. My dear girl, our magic is very much alive and present. To demonstrate, Morticia extended her hand, and the shadows in the corner of the atrium seemed to stretch toward her, wrapping around her fingers like affectionate pets before retreating. Hermione's eyes widened. That's not possible without a wand. For you, perhaps, Wednesday said flatly. Your kind forgot the old ways when you became dependent on those sticks. Harry intervened before Hermione could launch into what promised to be an intense academic debate. We need to register their residence. Could you help us navigate the bureaucracy? Hermione, never one to resist organizing anything, immediately took charge. Of course. You'll need the magical residency office on level 4. I'll take you there. As they followed Hermione to the elevators, Harry noticed people whispering and pointing. Some were clearly recognizing him, but most were staring at the Addamses. Morticia's elegant Gothic beauty, Gomez's exuberant energy, and Wednesday's intense, deadpan presence created quite the spectacle. The elevator was crowded with ministry workers who pressed themselves against the walls to avoid touching the strange newcomers. One wizard kept looking between Harry and Wednesday with obvious confusion, as if trying to determine how these people could possibly be associated with the savior of the wizarding world. Potter, a cool voice said as the elevator stopped at level 2. Draco Malfoy stood there, his pointed face showing surprise as he took in the scene. Malfoy, Harry nodded, not particularly wanting to deal with his old school rival today. To his surprise, Morticia stepped forward. You must be a Malfoy. I recognize the cheekbones, very distinctive. Your family and ours crossed paths in the 17th century, I believe. Draco looked startled. Yes, I'm Draco Malfoy. And you are? Morticia Addams, she said with a slight smile. Your ancestor Brutus Malfoy attempted to court my great-great-great-aunt Desdemona. She turned him into a newt for his presumption. He got better, eventually. Draco's pale face went even whiter. The Addams family is a myth. A cautionary tale for pure-blood children. All myths have roots in reality, young Malfoy, Gomez said cheerfully. Just as all families have skeletons in their closets. Ours just happen to walk around occasionally. The elevator doors began to close, and Harry caught a glimpse of Draco's stunned expression before they continued their descent. What was that about? Harry asked Morticia quietly. The old families know of us, she explained. Though many prefer to think we're just legends. It's more comfortable than acknowledging there are magical bloodlines older and stranger than their own. When they reached level 4, Hermione efficiently led them through a maze of corridors to the magical residency office. A harried-looking witch behind the counter looked up as they approached, did a double take at the sight of Harry Potter with the strange family, and quickly composed herself. How can I help you today? We need to register a magical residence, Harry explained. The Addams family has moved into a house near Grimmauld Place. The witch pulled out a stack of forms. Very well. I'll need information about the property, the type of magical protections, and any magical creatures kept on the premises. Creatures? Gomez's eyes lit up. Well, there's Kitty the lion, of course, and the piranhas, and the vultures, and Thing, though I'm not sure if he counts as a creature per se. Thing, the witch asked faintly. As if summoned, the disembodied hand crawled out of Gomez's pocket and scurried across the counter to shake the witch's hand. She screamed. What followed was 2 hours of increasingly bizarre paperwork complications. The ministry forms simply weren't designed to accommodate a house that had literally appeared overnight, contained rooms that defied spatial logic, and housed creatures that didn't fit into standard magical classifications. Wednesday, bored with the proceedings, wandered off and returned an hour later with detailed information about the ministry's security weaknesses that she refused to explain how she'd obtained. Finally, after Hermione's diplomatic intervention and Harry's somewhat shameless use of his celebrity status, the residence was registered. The classification was listed as non-standard magical dwelling, historical exception, with a note that the Aura department should avoid routine inspections, for their own safety. Well, that was invigorating. Gomez declared as they prepared to leave. Nothing like a good battle with bureaucracy to get the blood pumping. Hermione pulled Harry aside as the Addamses examined the Fountain of Magical Brethren with critical comments about its artistic merits. "Harry, what are you doing with these people?" she whispered urgently. "Do you have any idea who they are?" "The Addams family is mentioned in the same texts as the Peverills. They practice magic that predates our entire system." "I know," Harry said, surprised to find himself smiling. "Isn't it fascinating?" Hermione stared at him. "You're staying with them, aren't you? That's why your flat looked empty." Harry nodded. "Just for a while. They're different. Not what people expect me to associate with." "That's putting it mildly," Hermione muttered, but her expression softened. "You seem happier, though. More like yourself than you've been since the war ended." "I feel more like myself," Harry admitted. "They don't care that I'm Harry Potter, the chosen one. To them, I'm just another weird magical person. It's refreshing." Hermione sighed. "Just be careful, Harry. Their kind of magic isn't regulated for a reason. It can be unpredictable. After everything we've been through, a little unpredictability sounds pretty good," Harry replied. As they rejoined the Addamses, Harry noticed a commotion near the security desk. A group of reporters, including the unmistakable acid-green quill of Rita Skeeter, had spotted him. "Mr. Potter. Is it true you've taken up with an unregistered dark magic family?" Rita called, pushing forward. Wednesday stepped between Harry and the approaching journalists. Her expression didn't change, but the temperature seemed to drop several degrees. "If you're looking for a story about darkness," she said in her flat voice, "I'd be happy to show you true darkness. The kind that swallows light, hope, and particularly nosy reporters." The shadows around her feet seemed to writhe in anticipation. Rita Skeeter, who had faced down Death Eaters for a story, took one look at Wednesday Addams and decided discretion was the better part of valor. The reporters retreated, though not without shooting several photos. "I believe that concludes our business here," Morticia said smoothly. "Thank you for your assistance, Miss Granger. Perhaps you'll visit us for dinner soon. Wednesday tells me you have a remarkable intellect. We so rarely get to entertain scholars." Hermione, torn between academic curiosity and obvious concern, eventually nodded. "I'd like that, thank you." As they left the ministry, Harry felt lighter than he had in months. Tomorrow's prophet would undoubtedly feature wild speculation about his association with the mysterious Addams family, but for once, he didn't care what the wizarding world thought. He was forging his own path now. The next few weeks settled into a rhythm that was anything but ordinary. Living with the Addams family was like being in a house where Halloween never ended and danger lurked around every corner, not maliciously, but as a fact of daily life. Harry learned to check his bed for scorpions. Pugsley's pets had a habit of wandering, to knock before entering any room. Walking in on Gomez and Morticia's passionate tangos could be traumatizing, and to never, ever eat anything from the greenhouse without explicit permission. In return, the Addamses welcomed him as if he'd always been part of their strange family. Grandmama taught him ancient potions that would have given Snape apoplexy. Gomez enthusiastically demonstrated fencing moves and regaled him with outlandish family stories. Morticia shared her knowledge of rare magical plants that made herbology at Hogwarts seem tame by comparison. And then there was Wednesday. Of all the Addamses, she remained the most enigmatic. She watched Harry with those dark, unreadable eyes, occasionally offering cryptic observations or challenging him to strange magical duels that bore little resemblance to the formal wizard's dueling he knew. "Your problem," she told him one evening as they sat in the library, "is that you think of magic as a tool. Something separate from yourself." Harry looked up from the ancient grimoire he'd been studying. "Isn't it? We channel magic through our wands." Wednesday shook her head. "Magic isn't something you do. It's something you are." To demonstrate, she closed her eyes and held out her hand. The shadows in the room gathered around her fingers, solidifying into a small, writhing shape that resembled a raven before dissolving back into darkness. "I can't do that," Harry said, both disturbed and fascinated. "Not with that attitude," Wednesday replied flatly. "Try." Harry put down his wand and closed his eyes, feeling slightly foolish. He'd done wandless magic before, all wizards did in moments of extreme emotion, but never deliberately, and certainly not with shadows. "Feel the darkness," Wednesday instructed, her voice unusually patient. "Not as something to fear or fight, but as part of the balance. Light casts shadows. Life creates death. Magic flows through both." Harry thought about the shadows he'd known, the cupboard under the stairs, the chamber of secrets, the graveyard where Cedric died, the forbidden forest where he'd walked to his own death. Places of fear, yes, but also of strength and survival. He felt something cool brush against his outstretched fingers, not threatening, but curious, like a cat investigating a new person. When he opened his eyes, a small shadow was wrapped around his hand, not as solid as Wednesday's had been, but definitely responding to his will. "I did it," he exclaimed, then lost concentration, and the shadow dissipated. For the first time since he'd met her, Wednesday Addams smiled, a small, quick thing that transformed her severe face. Not bad for a wand waver. The moment was interrupted by things scurrying into the room, frantically gesturing. "What is it?" Harry asked, having grown accustomed to the disembodied hands' communications. Wednesday interpreted the rapid finger movements. "Visitors at the gate. Ministry officials." Harry groaned. Despite their legal registration, the ministry had sent representatives almost daily, looking for excuses to investigate the Addams residence. Usually, it was junior officials easily intimidated by Morticia's elegant menace or confused into submission by Gomez's enthusiastic non-sequiturs. But when they reached the entrance hall, Harry was surprised to find Kingsley Shacklebolt himself standing there, looking remarkably composed for someone who had just been greeted by Lurch. "Minister," Harry said, genuinely pleased to see the man who had fought alongside him during the war. "What brings you here?" "Harry," Kingsley nodded, his deep voice reassuring as always. "I thought it was time I met your hosts in person. The reports I've been receiving are rather colorful." Minister Shacklebolt, Morticia glided forward, extending her hand. "What an honor. Your aura is remarkably balanced for a politician." If Kingsley was surprised by this unusual greeting, he didn't show it. "Mrs. Addams, I presume. Thank you for welcoming me into your home." "Any friend of Harry's is welcome here," Gomez declared, pumping Kingsley's hand enthusiastically. "Even if they are government officials. No offense intended." "None taken," Kingsley said with a slight smile. "I've come to discuss a matter of some delicacy. Perhaps we could speak privately." They moved to the drawing room, where Lurch served tea in cups that Harry was almost certain were made from human skulls. Kingsley took this in stride, accepting a cup with dignified courtesy. "I'll be direct," the minister said after pleasantries were exchanged. "Your family's presence in Britain has caused quite a stir, Mr. and Mrs. Addams. There are those in the ministry who view your alternative magical practices with suspicion. Bureaucrats fear what they cannot regulate," Wednesday observed from her position by the window. Kingsley inclined his head in acknowledgement. "Indeed, Miss Addams. However, I've reviewed the ancient treaties between the ministry and the elder families. The Addams clan is specifically mentioned in the Concordat of 1357 as being exempt from standard magical restrictions." Morticia looked pleased. "How refreshing to find a minister who reads the fine print. The problem," Kingsley continued, "is that certain factions are using your presence to stir up fear. After the war, people are easily frightened by anything that seems different or potentially dark." Harry felt a surge of anger. That's exactly the kind of prejudice that led to Voldemort's rise in the first place. "I agree," Kingsley said calmly. "Which is why I'm here not to restrict your family, but to ask for your help." That caught everyone by surprise. "Our help?" Gomez leaned forward, intrigued. With what, exactly? There's an upcoming International Confederation of Wizards conference in London. Representatives from magical communities worldwide will attend. I believe having the Addams family present would send a powerful message about magical cooperation and respecting ancient traditions. Wednesday narrowed her eyes. You want to parade us around like exotic specimens? Look at the strange Addamses, aren't they harmlessly quirky? Kingsley met her gaze unflinchingly. No, Miss Addams. I want to acknowledge your family's ancient magical lineage and legitimate place in the magical community. I want to challenge the notion that all magic must fit neatly into ministry-approved categories to be valid. Harry watched the Addamses absorb this. He had to hand it to Kingsley, the man knew how to frame a diplomatic request. It sounds positively political, Morticia mused. How delightfully uncomfortable for everyone involved. We accept. Gomez declared. The Addams family has never shied away from a good controversy. We'll show those stuffy diplomats what real magic looks like. There is one condition, Morticia added smoothly. Harry must accompany us. As our cultural attaché. Harry blinked in surprise. Me? Why? Because, dear boy, Morticia explained, you bridge our worlds. You understand both traditional wizardry and our more eccentric approach to magic. Kingsley looked thoughtful. Having Harry Potter publicly associated with the Addams family would certainly help normalize your presence here. I'm being used as a public relations tool, Harry realized aloud. Welcome to my world, Wednesday muttered. Despite his initial reluctance, Harry found himself warming to the idea. If his celebrity status could help challenge the same prejudices that had enabled Voldemort's rise, maybe it was worth leveraging for once. All right, he agreed. But no press interviews. Kingsley looked relieved. Thank you all. The conference is next week. I'll send the details. He rose to leave, then hesitated. One more thing, there have been reports of unusual magical disturbances around London. Not connected to your family, he added quickly, but something different. If you notice anything strange, stranger than us, you mean, Wednesday interrupted. Please let me know, Kingsley finished with a slight smile. After the minister left, the Addamses turned to Harry expectantly. Well, Gomez said, rubbing his hands together, looks like we're going to make our debut in high wizarding society. We'll need to look our most gruesome. I should warn you, Harry said, unable to suppress a smile, wizarding fashion is eccentric in its own way. Pugsley will need a new suit, Morticia mused. The last one was dissolved in that unfortunate acid experiment. And I've outgrown my guillotine cufflinks, Gomez lamented. As they discussed their wardrobe plans, Harry caught Wednesday watching him with that calculating gaze. What? He asked when the others had moved on to debating the merits of various poisons as cologne. You're enjoying this, she observed. The chaos we bring to your orderly wizarding world. Harry considered this. I guess I am. The wizarding world has always had these rigid categories, light and dark, pure blood and muggleborn, acceptable and unacceptable magic. Your family just ignores all of that. Rules are for people who lack the imagination to navigate chaos, Wednesday said. She hesitated, then added, the alumni weekend at Nevermore is immediately after this conference. You're still coming. It wasn't a question, but Harry nodded anyway. Looking forward to it. Something that might have been approval flickered across Wednesday's face before she returned to her usual deadpan expression. Later that night, as Harry wrote to Ron and Hermione about the upcoming conference, he reflected on how much had changed in just a few weeks. He'd gone from hiding from the wizarding world to preparing to challenge its preconceptions alongside a family that defied categorization. For the first time since the war ended, he felt like he had a purpose again, not one thrust upon him by prophecy or expectation, but one he'd chosen for himself. Outside his window, a werewolf howled in the distance. From somewhere in the house came the sound of Pugsley's latest experiment exploding, followed by enthusiastic applause from Gomez. Things scurried across Harry's desk, helpfully handing him a fresh quill. Harry smiled to himself. The Addams family might be strange, but they were starting to feel like home. The night of the International Confederation of Wizards conference arrived with appropriate dramatic flair. A thunderstorm rolled over London, providing what Gomez enthusiastically called perfect ambience for a grand entrance. The conference was being held at the historic Wisengamot Chamber, expanded for the occasion to accommodate representatives from magical communities worldwide. As Harry and the Addams family approached the ministry, lightning flashed dramatically behind them. "Nature has excellent timing," Wednesday observed dryly. The Addams family had dressed for the occasion in what they considered formal attire. Gomez wore a pinstriped suit with a blood-red carnation and his sword cane. Morticia was resplendent in a black gown that seemed to flow like liquid shadow. Wednesday had chosen a black dress similar to her mother's but with silver spiderweb embroidery that actually moved. Even Pugsley, who had begged to come along, looked unusually presentable in a miniature version of his father's suit, though Harry had caught Morticia confiscating several suspicious bulges from his pockets before they left. Harry himself wore formal wizarding robes, feeling strangely like a cultural bridge between worlds, not quite fitting in with either the traditional wizards or the Addamses, but connected to both. As they entered the ministry atrium, conversations paused and heads turned. Harry was used to stares, but tonight they weren't just looking at him. The Addams family commanded attention simply by existing, their confidence and unapologetic strangeness creating a space around them as people unconsciously stepped back. Kingsley approached, resplendent in formal minister robes. "You're just in time. Many of the international representatives have expressed interest in meeting the famous Addams family." "Famous?" Harry asked. "Infamous, more likely," Wednesday corrected. "The Addams name is known in magical communities worldwide," Morticia explained. "Usually in the context of cautionary tales or ancient magical incidents." "The Shanghai Shrieking of 1837, Gomez said nostalgically. "Great-grandfather Addams made quite an impression there." Kingsley led them into the conference hall, where representatives from dozens of magical nations mingled. Harry recognized some. Madame Maxime towered over a group near the refreshments, while Victor Crumb stood with the Bulgarian delegation. The international representatives regarded the Addams family with reactions ranging from fascination to thinly veiled horror. A Japanese wizard approached and bowed deeply to Morticia. "Addams-sama," he said respectfully. "The Kitsune clans of Kyoto still tell tales of your ancestors' visit during the Edo period." "Ah yes, Great-Aunt Calpurnia," Morticia smiled. "She so enjoyed her time in Japan. I believe she brought back several cursed katanas for the family collection." The Japanese representative nodded. "They are remembered as gifts of great honor. Though the village that housed her had to be relocated after her departure." As the evening progressed, Harry watched with growing amusement as the Addamses worked the room. Gomez regaled the French delegation with outrageous stories that somehow charmed rather than offended. Morticia engaged in deep conversation with ancient wizards from Egypt about death rituals that had half the British ministry representatives looking queasy. Pugsley demonstrated small explosive charms to delighted representatives from the American Magical Congress. Wednesday, predictably, stood apart from the crowd, observing with her usual detached interest. Harry joined her near a column. "Not enjoying the social scene?" he asked. "I prefer to watch," she replied. "People reveal more when they think no one is paying attention." Harry followed her gaze to where Lucius Malfoy, recently pardoned due to his last-minute defection during the war, was speaking intently with representatives from Eastern Europe. "The blonde man with the walking stick," Wednesday said. "He's plotting something. His aura reeks of desperation and ambition." Harry frowned. Lucius Malfoy. He was a Death Eater, one of Voldemort's followers. Claimed he was under mind control when Voldemort fell the first time. "Liar," Wednesday said with certainty. "His soul is stained with choices, not compulsion." Before Harry could respond, a commotion near the entrance drew everyone's attention. Rita Skeeter had arrived with her photographer, immediately homing in on the unusual sight of Harry Potter standing with Wednesday Addams. "Mr. Potter. How about a statement on your association with the Addams family? Sources say you've moved into their residence. Is this a romantic connection with the daughter, perhaps?" Wednesday's expression didn't change, but the shadows around her feet darkened ominously. "Ms. Skeeter," Harry said with forced politeness, "this is an official diplomatic function, not a tabloid opportunity. The public has a right to know why their savior is consorting with known practitioners of ancient dark magic," Rita persisted, her quick quotes quill hovering eagerly. Before Harry could respond, Wednesday stepped forward. "Your definition of dark is tediously limited," she said, her voice flat but carrying. "Magic isn't dark or light. It simply is. Like death. Like life. The only darkness that matters is the darkness in intent." Her words silenced not just Rita, but conversations throughout the hall. In the quiet that followed, Wednesday continued, "The Addams family has practiced magic since before your ministry decided which spells were acceptable and which weren't. We've never used it to claim superiority or enforce prejudice. Can your light wizard say the same?" Harry felt a surge of admiration for her clear, unflinching perspective. It articulated something he'd felt but never quite managed to express. Kingsley, sensing an opportunity, joined them. "Miss Addams raises an excellent point, one that speaks to the purpose of this conference. Magical cooperation requires us to move beyond simplistic categorizations. What might have become an awkward diplomatic incident instead turned into an impromptu discussion about magical classification and regulation, with representatives from various nations offering their perspectives. The Addams family, far from being marginalized as strange outsiders, became the center of a surprisingly productive cultural exchange." Later, as the formal presentations began, Harry found himself seated between Morticia and Wednesday in the distinguished guests section. Lucius Malfoy, passing their row, gave Harry a contemptuous look before his eyes fell on Morticia. His expression changed to one of uncertainty, even fear. "Madam Addams," he said stiffly. "Mr. Malfoy," Morticia replied pleasantly. "Your son mentioned you when we met at the ministry. He has your distinctive features." Lucius seemed unsure how to take this. "The Malfoy bloodline is known for its purity." "Yes, we've noticed the effects of that," Wednesday commented dryly. Lucius' face flushed with anger, but before he could respond, Morticia continued smoothly, "Blood purity is such a limiting concept, don't you think? The Addams family values uniqueness above all. Mutations, quirks, bizarre abilities, these are the true gifts of a distinguished bloodline." Gomez leaned around his wife. "Absolutely. My brother Fester can generate electricity through his fingertips. Marvelous party trick and excellent for executions." Lucius blanched and moved away quickly. "Was that necessary?" Harry asked, though he couldn't help grinning. "Prejudice should always be confronted," Morticia said simply. "Preferably with something that disturbs the prejudiced person's worldview." The conference proceedings began with Kingsley's opening address, followed by presentations from various magical communities. Harry found himself unexpectedly fascinated by the differences in magical practice around the world. The Japanese delegation demonstrated spirit communication techniques that reminded him of the Addams' casual relationship with ghosts and the dead. African wizards presented rituals that involved communal magic rather than individual spellcasting. When it was the British ministry's turn, Percy Weasley gave a rather dry presentation about international magical cooperation that had Wednesday muttering acerbic comments under her breath that made Harry struggle not to laugh. The evening's highlight was meant to be a demonstration of international magical techniques, with representatives performing traditional spells from their regions. When Kingsley invited the Addams family to participate, Gomez jumped up eagerly. "Marvelous! Wednesday, shall we show them the ritual of thorns?" Wednesday considered this. "That requires a blood sacrifice, Father." "Perhaps something less controversial," Morticia suggested, noting the alarmed looks from ministry officials. In the end, she and Gomez performed what they called a simplified version of an ancient Addams ritual that involved shadow manipulation and wandless elemental magic. The shadows throughout the chamber gathered and danced, forming shapes and patterns that were both beautiful and slightly disturbing. The temperature fluctuated dramatically as fire and ice manifested briefly before dissipating. When they finished, there was a moment of stunned silence before applause broke out, hesitant at first, then growing in enthusiasm. Harry noticed that some of the older wizards, particularly those from Eastern Europe and Asia, were nodding with respectful recognition. "An ancient form indeed," murmured an elderly witch from Romania. "We thought such practices lost to time." As the formal portion of the evening concluded and guests returned to mingling, Harry found himself approached by a steady stream of people curious about his connection to the Addamses. Most were diplomatic enough not to ask directly, but their meaning was clear: what was Harry Potter doing with such an unusual family? "They accepted me without expectations," he found himself explaining to Victor Crumb. "No boy who lived, no chosen one. Just Harry." Crumb nodded in understanding. "Famous names become cages, yes. I understand this." Across the room, Harry spotted Ron and Hermione, who had arrived late. He waved them over, eager for his best friends to properly meet the family he'd been living with. "Blimey, mate," Ron said as they approached, eyeing the Addamses with fascination. "Hermione told me they were unusual, but—" "Ronald," Hermione hissed, "be polite." Morticia smiled graciously. "No offense taken, Mr. Weasley. We consider unusual a compliment." "Absolutely." Gomez agreed enthusiastically. "Normal is the true insult in the Addams family." Ron relaxed somewhat, especially when Pugsley showed him a small explosive device that turned whoever triggered it temporarily purple, brilliant for pranks. "Fred and George would love this," Ron declared, immediately thinking of his brother's joke shop. Hermione, meanwhile, was deep in conversation with Morticia about the theoretical foundations of Addams family magic. "So you're saying intent supersedes incantation? That contradicts everything I've studied in magical theory." "Western magical theory," Morticia corrected gently. "Eastern traditions have long recognized the primacy of will and intent. It's like the difference between following a recipe and understanding the principles of cooking," Harry added, surprising himself with the insight. Wednesday raised an eyebrow at him. "An apt analogy. Perhaps there's hope for you after all, Potter." As the evening wore on, Harry noticed Lucius Malfoy once again, this time in conversation with a wizard Harry didn't recognize, a tall, severe-looking man with a silver streak in his dark hair. Something about their body language suggested tension. Wednesday followed his gaze. "The stranger isn't what he appears to be," she said quietly. "His aura is fractured. Like he's wearing someone else's skin." Harry felt a chill. After the war, he'd hoped for a break from dark wizards and conspiracies. But Wednesday's perception had proven accurate too many times to dismiss. "Should we tell Kingsley?" Wednesday considered this. "Not yet. We need more information." The conference concluded with a final address from Kingsley, who thanked the Addams family specifically for their participation. As people began to depart, Morticia and Gomez were surrounded by representatives eager to continue discussions about their unique magical practices. "Quite the success," Harry observed to Wednesday as they watched from the sidelines. "For them, perhaps," she replied. "But something's wrong here, Harry. Can't you feel it?" Now that she mentioned it, Harry did sense a subtle wrongness in the air, a magical dissonance that reminded him of the strange readings that had led him to the Addams house in the first place. "What do you think it is?" Wednesday's dark eyes scanned the dispersing crowd. "I'm not sure yet. But it feels like preparation. Something gathering strength." Harry had learned to trust his instincts during the war, and they were telling him Wednesday was right. Whatever was happening, it wasn't over. "The Nevermore alumni weekend is in 3 days, Wednesday said abruptly. "We should leave for the academy tomorrow." You think whatever this is will follow us there? Wednesday gave him one of her rare, slight smiles. I'm counting on it. Nevermore has resources we don't have here. And people who understand different kinds of magic. People like Enid? Harry asked, remembering the werewolf roommate Wednesday had mentioned. Enid sees things others miss, Wednesday acknowledged. Behind all that annoying cheerfulness is a surprisingly perceptive mind. Coming from Wednesday, this was high praise indeed. As they prepared to leave with the rest of the Addams family, Harry caught sight of the strange wizard again, watching them from across the chamber. For a brief moment, the man's eyes met Harry's, and Harry felt a jolt of recognition, not of the face, but of the presence behind it. Something cold and ancient and hungry. Then the moment passed, and the wizard was gone, slipping away into the crowd. Wednesday, Harry said quietly, I think you're right about leaving for Nevermore tomorrow. I have a feeling we're going to need all the help we can get. Chapter 2, The Academy of Nightmares and Wonder. The train rattled across the countryside, moving farther from London with every passing minute. Harry sat across from Wednesday in a private compartment, watching the landscape transform from urban sprawl to rolling hills and dense forests. So, Nevermore Academy, Harry said, breaking the comfortable silence. You mentioned it's for outcasts? Like Hogwarts for the supernaturally unique? Wednesday looked up from the leather-bound book she'd been reading. Nevermore makes Hogwarts look like a Muggle primary school. The students aren't just witches and wizards, they're werewolves, vampires, gorgons, sirens. Creatures your ministry would register, restrict, or exterminate. And you fit in there because... I didn't, Wednesday said flatly. I fit in nowhere. That's rather the point. The rest of the Addams family had taken over the next compartment. Occasional explosions and maniacal laughter suggested Pugsley was entertaining himself, while Morticia and Gomez had transformed their space into what looked suspiciously like a honeymoon suite. Your parents seem excited about going back, Harry observed. Alumni weekend is a Nevermore tradition. Former students return to reconnect, reminisce about old grudges, and occasionally attempt to murder their childhood rivals. Harry blinked. You're joking. Wednesday's expression didn't change. Am I? Before Harry could decide if she was serious, the compartment door slid open. Lurch stood there, groaning something unintelligible as he offered a tray of what appeared to be finger sandwiches. Literal finger sandwiches. Thanks, Lurch, but I'm not hungry, Harry said quickly. The butler groaned again and shuffled away. You're thinking about what happened at the conference, Wednesday said, not a question but an observation. Harry nodded. That wizard, the one with the silver streak in his hair. You said his aura was fractured. What did you mean? Exactly what I said. It was as if two beings occupied the same space. Wednesday closed her book. I've seen something similar before, at Nevermore. A possession case. Like Voldemort with Quirrell? Or a Horcrux? Wednesday raised an eyebrow. Perhaps. Though this felt older. More fundamental. The train began to slow as they approached a station seemingly in the middle of nowhere. Through the window, Harry could see only dense forest and a small, weathered platform. We're here, Wednesday announced, standing and gathering her things. Here. There's nothing here. Wednesday almost smiled. That's the point. The Addams family disembarked onto the platform. No signs indicated where they were, and no other passengers got off. The train pulled away, leaving them alone in the silent forest. Ah! Smell that air. Gomez inhaled deeply. Decay, moss, and just a hint of despair. Hasn't changed a bit. Morticia touched his arm. So many memories, darling. Remember when we released those flesh-eating beetles into the cafeteria? How could I forget? 3 weeks of quarantine. Magnificent chaos. Gomez kissed her hand passionately. As the couple reminisced about their school days, Harry noticed a line of black carriages emerging from the forest. They moved without horses, or thestrals, seemingly pulled by shadows themselves. "Our transportation," Wednesday explained. "Nevermore sends carriages for alumni." The carriages stopped before them, doors opening silently. Harry followed the Addamses into the first one, settling onto plush velvet seats that seemed to whisper when he sat down. "Did that seat just sigh?" he asked. "The carriages are semi-sentient," Wednesday said, as if this were perfectly normal. "Don't worry, they only consume passengers on blood moon nights." Harry decided not to ask if she was joking this time. The journey through the forest took them deeper into darkness. Trees crowded close to the path, their branches forming a canopy that blocked out the afternoon sun. Occasionally, Harry caught glimpses of movement among the shadows, creatures watching their passage with glowing eyes. "The Nevermore woods," Morticia explained, noticing his gaze. "Home to numerous endangered magical species. The school serves as a sanctuary for them. And sometimes they serve as dinner for the students." Pugsley added cheerfully. The forest eventually gave way to an expansive clearing, and Harry got his first view of Nevermore Academy. Unlike Hogwarts' medieval castle aesthetic, Nevermore was a sprawling Gothic compound of spires, gargoyles, and stained glass. The central building resembled a Victorian mansion blown up to institutional proportions, flanked by dormitories and surrounded by gardens that somehow managed to look both meticulously maintained and hauntingly wild. "Impressive," Harry murmured. "If you like that sort of thing," Wednesday replied, though Harry detected a hint of fondness in her tone. The carriages deposited them at the main entrance, where a tall woman with silver-streaked black hair awaited them. Her severe expression softened slightly at the sight of Morticia. "Morticia from Addams," she said. "Still looking like death warmed over, I see." "Larissa Weems," Morticia replied with a gracious nod. "The years have been cruel, as one would hope." The women exchanged what Harry realized was their version of warm greetings, while Gomez enthusiastically shook hands with a cadaverous man who appeared to be another staff member. "And this must be Harry Potter," Principal Weems said, turning her sharp gaze on him. "Wednesday mentioned you'd be joining us. Quite the celebrity in your world, I understand." "Former celebrity," Harry corrected. "Just Harry now." Weems studied him with calculating eyes. "No one is just anything at Nevermore, Mr. Potter. We'll find your particular brand of unusual soon enough." The entrance hall of Nevermore reminded Harry of a more macabre version of Hogwarts: stone floors, vaulted ceilings, and mounted heads on the walls. Unlike Hogwarts, however, some of these heads occasionally blinked or whispered to passers-by. Students in black uniforms moved through the halls, casting curious glances at the alumni and their guest. Harry noticed immediate differences from Hogwarts students. Some had visible fangs, others scales or feathers, and one group appeared to float slightly above the floor. "The different cliques," Wednesday explained, following his gaze. "Vampires, scales, and the Furies. Nevermore doesn't sort by personality traits or arbitrary house systems. Nature dictates your social circle here." "And where did you fit in?" Wednesday gave him a look. "I didn't. I told you that already." Before Harry could respond, a colorful blur shot across the entrance hall and collided with Wednesday in what appeared to be a forceful hug. "Wednesday. Oh my God, you came." The blur resolved into a young woman about their age with rainbow-colored hair, a bright smile, and an outfit that incorporated every color of the spectrum. She bounced with excitement, still gripping Wednesday, who stood rigid as a board. "I wasn't sure you'd actually show for alumni weekend since you never answer my texts and, oh my God, is this him? Harry Potter?" The girl released Wednesday and turned her enthusiastic attention to Harry. Her eyes, he noticed, had a strange amber quality to them, not quite human. "Harry, this is Enid Sinclair," Wednesday said with a sigh. "My former roommate." "Enid, this is Harry. Please refrain from mauling him as you just did me." "Hi." Enid extended her hand, which Harry shook, finding her grip surprisingly strong. "I've heard so much about you." "Well, not from Wednesday obviously, because getting information from her is like trying to get blood from a stone, but I follow all the wizarding news sites and, you follow wizarding news?" Harry interrupted, surprised. Enid nodded enthusiastically. "Of course. My cousin's a wizard, goes to Ilvermorny. I've always been fascinated by wand magic, even though it doesn't work quite right for werewolves." "You're a werewolf?" Harry asked, unable to reconcile this bubbly, colorful girl with his image of werewolves like Lupin or Greyback. Enid's smile faltered slightly. "Is that a problem?" "No. Not at all," Harry said quickly. "One of my favorite professors was a werewolf. You're just, not what I pictured." Her smile returned full force. "Let me guess, you expected all doom and gloom and gurarg." She made a clawing motion with her hands. "That's more Wednesday's aesthetic. Speaking of which, I saved our old room for you guys. Principal Weems said alumni could stay in their former dorms if they wanted." Wednesday looked pained at the prospect. "Joy. The Addams family usually stays in the East Wing guest quarters," a new voice interjected. A slender young man with slick back hair and impeccable clothing approached. "Family tradition, isn't it, Wednesday?" "Xavier," Wednesday acknowledged with a nod that revealed nothing of her feelings. Harry sensed immediate tension between them, though whether it was positive or negative remained unclear. "Xavier Thorpe," the young man introduced himself to Harry, offering a hand. "Artistic psychic and Wednesday's ex." "Nice to meet you," Harry replied, wondering just how complicated Wednesday's social circle was going to be. "Xavier's dad is doing the big art installation for Alumni Weekend," Enid explained. "It's supposed to connect with the ancestral spirits of Nevermore or something cool like that." "Ancestral magic," Xavier clarified. "My father's been researching the connections between the founding families of various magical institutions. Turns out there's some surprising overlaps." Harry's interest peaked. "Between Nevermore and other schools? Like Hogwarts?" "Among others," Xavier nodded. "The magical world was smaller in the old days. The same families often had hands in establishing multiple institutions." Wednesday, who had been silent during this exchange, suddenly focused on something across the hall. "Interesting as this reunion is, we have company." Harry turned to see the tall, severe man with the silver streak in his hair, the same one from the ministry conference, crossing the entrance hall. He moved with purpose toward Principal Weems, who greeted him with professional courtesy. "Who invited him?" Enid whispered, her cheerful demeanor dimming. "You know him?" Harry asked. Xavier frowned. "Dr. Julian Briarwood. He was a guest lecturer here last year, specializes in ancient magical artifacts and dark rituals. Bit of a creep, if you ask me." "What's he doing here?" Wednesday's eyes narrowed as she watched the interaction. "He's been consulting on Dad's project," Xavier explained. "Claims to have special insight into the connections between magical bloodlines." Harry and Wednesday exchanged a look. The man who triggered Wednesday's suspicions at the ministry was now at Nevermore, involved with research into magical bloodlines and connections between schools. "I think we just found our next lead," Harry murmured. "Enid," Wednesday said abruptly. "I need access to the restricted archives." Enid blinked in surprise. "The archives? Why?" "Research. But those are off limits to everyone except, which is why I need your help," Wednesday interrupted. "You work in the library now, correct?" Enid sighed. "Fine, but if I get fired, you're finding me a new job." She turned to Harry with a conspiratorial smile. "She always does this, you know. Shows up out of nowhere and drags me into some dangerous mystery." "Sounds familiar," Harry said with a wry smile, thinking of his own history with Ron and Hermione. As the group moved deeper into the academy, Harry took in the sights. Nevermore shared Hogwarts' magical atmosphere but with a distinctly darker aesthetic. Candles floated in black holders, portraits moved but predominantly featured stern-looking individuals in various states of elegant decay, and the very air seemed charged with a different kind of magic, wild and primal rather than the structured energy of Hogwarts. The Addams parents had disappeared with Principal Weems, presumably to the guest quarters, while Pugsley had quickly found a group of younger students who shared his enthusiasm for explosives. "So, what's the plan?" Harry asked as they followed Enid through winding corridors. "Break into the archives tonight?" "No need for breaking," Enid said cheerfully. "I have keys." Being a responsible alumna has its perks. "Speaking of perks," Xavier interjected, "you're all invited to the opening ceremony tonight. My father's unveiling the first phase of his installation. Could be relevant to whatever conspiracy theory Wednesday's cooking up." "It's not a theory if it's true," Wednesday replied. "And something is very wrong with Dr. Briarwood." "When isn't something wrong at Nevermore?" Xavier countered. "Remember the Hyde incident? The siren attacks? Good times," Enid sighed nostalgically. They reached a door painted midnight blue with a silver crescent moon. Enid unlocked it with a flourish, revealing a spacious dormitory room split into two distinct halves. One side exploded with color, posters of bands, stuffed animals, fairy lights, and what appeared to be a shrine to some pop star. The other side was stark, minimalist, and entirely black and white. "Home sweet home," Enid announced. "I kept it exactly like it was when we were students." "Well, my side's a bit updated, but I left your side alone, Wednesday. Thought you'd appreciate the morgue aesthetic." Wednesday surveyed the room with what might have been nostalgia on anyone else. "You added more unicorns." "Only 3 more," Enid defended. "And look. I got you a new guillotine pencil holder." Harry hid a smile at the unlikely friendship between these polar opposites. It reminded him of his own friendships, different personalities somehow balancing each other. "I'll leave you to get settled," Xavier said. "Ceremony starts at sunset in the Great Hall." He paused at the door. "It's good to see you, Wednesday. Even under typically ominous circumstances." After he left, Enid immediately pounced with questions. "Okay, spill. What's going on between you two? And what's this about Dr. Creepy McCreeperson? And how did you end up with Harry Potter? Start at the beginning and include all the gory details." Wednesday sat on her bed with characteristic poise. "Dr. Briarwood was at the ministry conference last night, speaking with known dark wizards. His aura shows signs of possession or fragmentation. Now he's here, consulting on a project about magical bloodlines that connects Nevermore to other institutions like Hogwarts. So, bad guy doing bad things for bad reasons?" Enid summarized. "Potentially," Harry said. "But we need more information. What exactly is Xavier's father researching?" Enid flopped onto her bed, tucking a colorful pillow under her chin. "It's this big magical genealogy project. He's tracing how the old families interconnect across different magical communities. Apparently, some of Nevermore's founders had connections to Hogwarts, Ilvermorny, and other magical schools." "Including the Addams family?" Harry asked Wednesday. She nodded. "The Addams line intersects with several founding families, including the Blacks, who connect to the Sacred 28 in your wizarding community." Harry processed this. "So I might actually be related to your family through Sirius?" "All magical bloodlines tangle eventually," Wednesday said. "The question is why Dr. Briarwood is so interested in these connections, and what he was doing with Lucius Malfoy." "Malfoy?" Harry's brow furrowed. "His family's always been obsessed with blood status and magical lineage. If they're working with Briarwood on something related to ancient bloodlines, it can't be good," Enid finished. "Magical supremacy groups are the worst. We had some problems with them a few years ago, anti-outcast extremists who thought werewolves and vampires should be regulated." The conversation was interrupted by a bell tolling across the campus. "That's the dinner bell," Enid explained, bouncing up. Food first, conspiracy theories after. The dining hall makes these blood puddings that are to die for, no offense, Wednesday. None taken, Wednesday replied. Death by pudding would be disappointingly mundane. The Nevermore dining hall reminded Harry of Hogwarts' Great Hall, though with significant differences. Instead of 4 long house tables, smaller tables scattered throughout the space, clearly delineated by social groups. Stained glass windows depicted macabre scenes rather than heroic ones, and the enchanted ceiling showed not the outside sky but swirling nebulae and distant galaxies. Enid led them to a table where a diverse group had already gathered. Guys! Look who's here. The group included a pale young man with aristocratic features who Harry immediately identified as a vampire, a girl with iridescent scales along her cheekbones, and a muscular young man whose canine teeth suggested werewolf. Wednesday. You actually came, the scaled girl exclaimed. And brought a celebrity boyfriend. Not her boyfriend, Harry clarified quickly. Ajax is dating Wednesday now, the vampire drawled. Or did that explosive breakup I heard about change things? Wednesday's expression remained neutral. Harry Potter, meet the remnants of my social circle. Eugene the vampire, Divina the siren, and Ajax the werewolf. Ajax is not my boyfriend. We went on exactly 2 dates before he revealed himself to be tediously conventional. The werewolf winced. I suggested we go to a movie instead of a morgue for our 3rd date. Apparently, that's conventional. Harry felt a surprising pang of something like jealousy, which he quickly dismissed as ridiculous. His relationship with Wednesday was, actually, he wasn't sure what it was. Friendship seemed too simple, but anything else would be complicated in ways he couldn't quite articulate. The conversation flowed surprisingly easily as they ate. Harry found himself genuinely enjoying the company of Wednesday's Nevermore friends. Eugene asked thoughtful questions about wizard society without the starstruck quality Harry usually encountered. Divina debated the comparative magical educational systems with surprising insight. Even Ajax, after getting over his initial wariness of Harry, shared interesting perspectives on how werewolves were treated in different magical communities. It's way better at Nevermore, he explained between bites of a steak so rare it practically mooed. At Ilvermorny, my cousin has to register with magical authorities and take suppression potions during full moons. Here, we have special facilities for transformation nights. They actually encourage us to embrace our nature. Hogwarts had one professor who was a werewolf, Harry said. But he had to keep it secret. When people found out, he was forced to resign. That's messed up, Divina said, her scales flashing indignantly. Judge people by their actions, not their species. The conversation shifted when Xavier and an older man who shared his features approached their table. Evening, everyone, Xavier said. Father, you remember my friends. And this is Harry Potter, visiting with the Addams family. Vincent Thorpe had the same artistic intensity as his son, but with an air of established authority. He shook Harry's hand firmly. Mr. Potter. Your reputation precedes you, even in our somewhat separate magical community. You're the one working on the Ancestral Magic Project? Harry asked. Vincent's eyes lit up with enthusiasm. Indeed. A fascinating study of how magical bloodlines intertwine across traditions. The connections between Hogwarts founders and Nevermore's original families are particularly intriguing. We were hoping to see your research, Wednesday said directly. Particularly any connections to the Addams line. Of course. The Addams family features prominently in my work. In fact, I believe your family may have connections to one of Hogwarts' founders through a rather twisted branch of the family tree. Vincent glanced around conspiratorially. The unveiling tonight will showcase the first phase of my magical genealogy map. You'll see the connections yourself. After Vincent moved on to greet other alumni, Xavier lingered at their table. My father's been obsessed with this project for years. When Dr. Briarwood approached him with additional research, he was ecstatic. What kind of additional research? Wednesday asked sharply. Xavier shrugged. Ancient texts, family grimoires, artifacts with blood magic signatures. Briarwood specializes in magical artifacts that respond to bloodlines, items that can only be activated by descendants of specific families. Harry and Wednesday exchanged looks. Blood-activated magical artifacts sounded ominously familiar to Harry after his experiences with Voldemort. We need to get into those archives, Harry murmured. Enid nodded. After the ceremony. Most people will be at the reception, so the library should be empty. The remainder of dinner passed with tension thrumming beneath the surface of casual conversation. Harry observed Dr. Briarwood at the staff table, noting how he seemed to be watching specific students with unusual interest. When the man's gaze landed on their table, Harry felt a cold prickle along his spine, the same sensation he'd experienced when facing dark magic. After dinner, the entire school gathered in the great hall for the ceremony. Vincent Thorpe stood beside an enormous covered structure that dominated the center of the room. Principal Weems gave a brief welcome speech before turning the floor over to Vincent. Fellow Nevermore alumni, distinguished guests, and students, Vincent began. For centuries, magical communities have remained separated by tradition, prejudice, and simple geography. My life's work has been to uncover the connections that unite us all. Harry stood with Wednesday, Enid, and the Addams family near the front of the crowd. Morticia and Gomez watched with polite interest, while Pugsley seemed more focused on something suspiciously explosive looking in his pocket. Tonight, Vincent continued, I unveil the first phase of the magical genealogy matrix, a living magical artifact that maps the connections between the founding families of the world's greatest magical institutions. With a flourish, Vincent removed the covering to reveal what appeared to be a massive, three-dimensional family tree rendered in glowing magical energy. Names and connections floated in midair, shifting and rearranging as the magic settled. Gasps rippled through the crowd as people recognized their own family names among the glowing threads. Beautiful, isn't it? Vincent said proudly. Each light represents a magical bloodline. The connections show marriages, alliances, and hidden relationships that history has forgotten. And here, he waved his hand, and a section of the display enlarged, we can see how Nevermore's original 4 families connected to Hogwarts founders. Harry leaned forward, fascinated despite his suspicions. According to the glowing diagram, Salazar Slytherin had a connection to one of Nevermore's founding families, the Nightshades, through a marriage in the 12th century. More surprisingly, the Addams line connected to Rowena Ravenclaw through a series of alliances in the 14th century. The Addams family, Vincent announced, represents one of the oldest unbroken magical bloodlines in the Western world. Their connections span across multiple magical communities. Morticia and Gomez accepted this announcement with dignified nods, though Harry noticed Gomez could barely contain his excitement at being the center of attention. As Vincent continued explaining the various connections, Harry noticed Dr. Briarwood moving closer to the display, his eyes fixed not on the presentation but on Wednesday. Something about his gaze made Harry instinctively move closer to her. He's watching you, Harry whispered. I noticed, she replied, her voice cool but her posture tensing slightly. The ceremony concluded with Vincent activating another feature of the display, a magical demonstration of how certain spells and abilities had traveled through bloodlines. Golden energy flowed through the connections, illuminating specific names. Certain magical gifts follow bloodlines, Vincent explained. The Parseltongue ability of Salazar Slytherin's descendants, the psychic abilities of the Nightshade line, the death magic of the Addams family. As if responding to its mention, the Addams line in the display pulsed with dark energy. Simultaneously, Wednesday stiffened beside Harry. Something's wrong, she murmured. The magic in that display, it's pulling on something. Before Harry could ask what she meant, Dr. Briarwood stepped forward, touching the display at a junction where several bloodlines converged. The entire matrix flashed with sudden intensity. And now, Briarwood announced, his voice cutting across Vincent's presentation, let us witness the true purpose of this remarkable tool. Vincent looked confused. Dr. Briarwood, this isn't part of the demonstration. His protest was cut short as the magical display began to transform. The elegant family tree twisted, connections reshaping themselves into what appeared to be a complex ritual pattern. Energy began to flow from the names displayed toward the center, where a vortex of magical power formed. Blood calls to blood, Briarwood intoned, his voice suddenly deeper, more resonant. Across time, across death, across the veil between worlds. Harry reached for his wand as gasps and screams erupted from the crowd. Beside him, Wednesday's eyes narrowed with recognition. "It's a summoning ritual," she said. "He's using the bloodline connections to channel power." Principal Weems stepped forward. "Dr. Briarwood. Stop this immediately." Briarwood turned toward her with a smile that wasn't quite human. "I'm afraid Dr. Briarwood isn't available at the moment." His eyes flashed with an unnatural light. "But Goody Fry would love to reacquaint herself with the descendants of those who burned her at the stake." The name sent a visible shock through Principal Weems. "Impossible. Goody Fry died centuries ago. Death is merely a transition," Briarwood, or the entity speaking through him, said. "And now, thanks to this lovely magical nexus and the gathered descendants of those who wronged me, I can return." The vortex of energy expanded, and Harry felt a painful tug in his chest, as if something were trying to extract his very essence. Around them, others showed similar signs of distress, particularly those whose names appeared in the display. Wednesday moved with surprising speed. She pushed through the crowd toward the display, Harry right behind her. The rest of the Addams family followed, seemingly unaffected by whatever was draining others. "Fascinating technique," Morticia commented as they approached the rapidly destabilizing magical artifact. "A blood-based necromantic summoning using genetic connections as conduits. Quite elegant, really." "Absolutely." Gomez agreed enthusiastically. "Reminds me of Great-Uncle Vlad's resurrection attempt of 37. Ended badly for everyone involved, but spectacularly entertaining." Harry drew his wand. "We need to disrupt the ritual. Any ideas?" Wednesday studied the swirling magic with clinical detachment. "The power is flowing through family connections. If we sever those connections, blood magic can only be countered by blood magic," Morticia interrupted gently. "Wednesday, darling, I believe this calls for the Addams family specialty." Without hesitation, Morticia drew a small silver blade from her sleeve, slicing her palm in one elegant motion. Gomez immediately did the same, followed by Pugsley with perhaps too much enthusiasm. Wednesday met Harry's eyes. "Our blood carries old magic," she explained, producing a similar blade. "If you trust me." Harry extended his hand without hesitation. "I trust you." The small blade stung as it sliced across his palm. Wednesday made a similar cut on her own hand, then clasped her bleeding palm against his. The sensation was immediate and electric, like touching a live wire, but instead of pain, Harry felt a rush of connection to something ancient and powerful. Together, they approached the magical display as chaos erupted around them. Students and staff were running for the exits while Dr. Briarwood, or the entity possessing him, continued chanting in an ancient language that made Harry's ears ring. The Addams family moved as one, placing their bleeding hands on different points of the magical matrix. Harry and Wednesday touched their joined hands to the center, where the vortex was strongest. The effect was instantaneous. The Addams' blood interacted with the matrix, sending pulses of dark energy through the connections. Instead of feeding the summoning ritual, their blood seemed to corrupt it, disrupting the carefully constructed patterns. "No!" Briarwood screamed, his voice overlaid with another, higher pitch. "What are you doing?" "Fighting fire with fire," Wednesday replied calmly. "Or in this case, blood magic with blood magic." The vortex began to collapse, the energy flowing back through the connections. Briarwood staggered, his face contorting as he fought against some internal struggle. The magical display sputtered, connections breaking and reforming chaotically. This isn't over, Briarwood/Goody Fry snarled. The convergence has already begun. Blood will call to blood, and the ancient ones will answer. With a final surge of power, the display imploded, sending a shockwave through the hall that knocked most people off their feet. When the dust settled, Briarwood was gone, leaving only a scorch mark on the floor where he had stood. Harry helped Wednesday to her feet, their hands still joined and tacky with partially dried blood. "Are you okay?" She nodded, looking unusually thoughtful. "That was interesting. Your blood interacted with the Addams magic in an unexpected way. Is that good or bad? I'm not entirely sure yet." Wednesday studied their joined hands. But the connection amplified something. Principal Weems approached, looking shaken but composed. "Would someone like to explain what just happened in my school?" "Possession, attempted resurrection, and thwarted blood magic," Morticia summarized helpfully. "Typical alumni weekend activities, I'd say." Weems pinched the bridge of her nose. "The Addams family." "Why is it always the Addams family?" "Because we're delightfully prone to attracting supernatural calamity," Gomez offered cheerfully. "Makes life so much more interesting." As staff members began restoring order and tending to affected students, Harry pulled Wednesday aside. "The archives. We need to know what Briarwood was really after, and what he meant by the convergence." Wednesday nodded. "Enid, are you still willing to help us break in?" Enid, who had joined them looking unusually serious, brandished a ring of keys. "After that?" "Absolutely. Nobody magically assaults my school and gets away with it." "I'm coming too," Xavier said, appearing beside them. "That thing used my father's work. I want to know why." With one last look at the destruction in the Great Hall, the four of them slipped away into the darkness of Nevermore's corridors. The Nevermore library resembled a Gothic cathedral dedicated to the worship of forbidden knowledge. Towering bookshelves reached toward vaulted ceilings, connected by wrought iron staircases that spiraled upward into shadow. Stained glass windows depicting scenes from mythology and magical history filtered the moonlight into blood-red and midnight blue patterns across the floor. "The restricted archives are in the sublevels," Enid whispered, leading them to an ornate iron door partially hidden behind a shelf of ancient grimoires. "Only staff and approved researchers are allowed access." She fumbled with her keys, trying several before finding one that fit the heavy lock. The door swung open with a sound like a sigh, revealing a stone staircase descending into darkness. "Lumos," Harry murmured, his wand tip illuminating the steep steps. "Show off," Wednesday commented, simply snapping her fingers to conjure a blue flame in her palm. The archives below were even more impressive than the library above. The chamber was circular, with shelves arranged like spokes around a central podium. Glass cases displayed artifacts interspersed among the ancient texts, peculiar instruments, preserved specimens, and items that seemed to shift when viewed directly. "What exactly are we looking for?" Xavier asked, running his fingers along the spines of leather-bound tomes. "Anything connected to blood magic, family lineages, or someone named Goody Fry," Harry suggested. "Or the convergence Briarwood mentioned," Wednesday added. "Something that connects Nevermore to Hogwarts through bloodlines." They split up to cover more ground. Harry found himself in a section dedicated to magical genealogy, which seemed promising given the circumstances. The books here were ancient, some written in languages he didn't recognize. "Find anything?" he called after several minutes of searching. "Maybe," Xavier replied from across the chamber. "There's a whole section on Nevermore's founding families here, including multiple references to connections with European magical institutions." Wednesday appeared beside Harry, making him jump slightly. She had an uncanny ability to move silently. "This might be relevant," she said, placing an aged journal on the central podium. "A record of the Salem witch trials, with specific mention of Goody Fry." Enid joined them, carrying what appeared to be a glass orb containing swirling smoke. "And I found this in Dr. Briarwood's office upstairs. It was sitting out on his desk like he wanted someone to find it." The four gathered around the podium as Wednesday opened the journal. The pages were brittle with age, the handwriting cramped and difficult to read. Goody Abigail Fry, Wednesday read aloud, convicted of witchcraft in 1697. Before her execution, she cursed the families of her accusers, swearing to return when the bloodlines converged again. Classic witch revenge curse, Enid commented. But why now? And what's this convergence? Xavier studied the genealogy texts he'd brought over. According to these records, many magical bloodlines are reaching critical convergence points due to intermarriage over generations. The Addams line, the Ravenclaw descendants, the Nightshade family, they're all reconnecting through recent generations. Like the display showed, Harry realized. The magical families that once founded separate institutions are coming back together after centuries of divergence. Wednesday turned her attention to the orb Enid had found. This is a prophecy sphere. Similar to those kept in your ministry's Department of Mysteries. Harry looked at it with newfound interest. Can we hear what's inside? Typically, only those mentioned in the prophecy can activate it, Xavier explained. Blood recognition charm. Without hesitation, Wednesday pricked her finger with the same small blade she'd used earlier and pressed the blood to the surface of the sphere. Nothing happened. Let me try, Harry said, offering his still healing palm to the orb. The moment his blood touched the glass, the sphere began to glow. Smoke swirled more rapidly inside, and a voice emerged, not Briarwood's, but a woman's, ancient and rasping. When the blood of the wise eagle mingles with the blood of the deathless shadow, when the lightning-marked one touches the daughter of darkness, the gates between worlds will weaken. The ancient ones watch and wait for the convergence, when blood calls to blood across the divide. What was sundered shall be rejoined, and what was bound shall be unleashed. The voice faded, leaving an echoing silence in the chamber. Well, that's not ominous at all, Enid said, breaking the tension. Harry's mind raced. The wise eagle, that must be Ravenclaw. And the deathless shadow. The Addams family, Wednesday concluded. Our line has always had a particular relationship with death. And the lightning-marked one, Xavier added, looking at Harry's scar. That's pretty obvious. The daughter of darkness, Enid said, nudging Wednesday. Also obvious. Harry met Wednesday's eyes. When we touched blood earlier, during the ritual, did you feel something change? Like a connection forming? She nodded, her expression uncharacteristically uncertain. Our blood interaction enhanced the magic somehow. Amplified it. Which means, Xavier said grimly, that you two might have inadvertently started whatever convergence Briarwood, or Goody Fry, was trying to achieve. The implications hung heavy in the air. Harry had enough experience with prophecies to know they were rarely good news, especially when they involved him specifically. The ancient ones, Enid repeated. Who or what are they? Wednesday turned back to the journal, flipping through more pages. Here's another reference. Apparently, Goody Fry claimed to serve entities she called the Ancient Ones, beings that existed before modern magic was codified, who taught the original magical families their craft. Entities that want to return, Harry added, thinking of the possession they'd witnessed. Using our blood connection as a conduit. Xavier pulled another book from the shelf, this one bound in what appeared to be some type of scaled hide. The Compendium of Forgotten Magics mentions similar beings, primordial magical entities that were banished or sealed away when structured magical systems like those taught at Hogwarts and Nevermore became dominant. So we've potentially started the process of unleashing ancient, probably malevolent magical entities because our blood mixed. Harry summarized, feeling the familiar weight of magical responsibility settling on his shoulders again. Brilliant. Just what I needed after defeating one Dark Lord. Don't be so negative, Wednesday said flatly. At least this time you have the Addams family on your side. We specialize in the ancient and malevolent. Despite the seriousness of the situation, Harry found himself smiling. There was something refreshing about Wednesday's matter-of-fact approach to potential magical catastrophe. Their research was interrupted by the sound of the archive door opening above. Footsteps descended the staircase, too many to be just a single night guard. "Someone's coming," Enid whispered, hastily gathering the materials they'd spread across the podium. "We need to hide." Harry reached for his wand, considering a disillusionment charm, but Wednesday was already moving toward a shadowed alcove between bookshelves, gesturing for them to follow. The space seemed too small for 4 people, but as they pressed into it, Harry felt the shadows deepen and wrap around them, concealing their presence. "Shadow manipulation," Wednesday explained in a whisper so quiet he barely heard it. "Family specialty." Several figures entered the archive chamber. In the dim light, Harry recognized Principal Weems, Vincent Thorpe, and 2 other staff members he hadn't met. "The magical residue is strongest here," Vincent was saying, holding what appeared to be a magical detection device. "Whatever Briarwood was planning, these archives contain the source material." "I've contacted the Council of Magical Institutions," Weems replied, her voice tense. "Representatives from Hogwarts, Ilvermorny, and Beauxbatons will arrive tomorrow. If this convergence affects all our schools through shared bloodlines, we need a coordinated response." "The Addams family may be the key," one of the unknown staff members suggested. "Their bloodline connects to multiple founding families, and they seem to have some natural resistance to the draining effect of the ritual." "And what about Harry Potter?" Vincent asked. "I saw him and the Addams girl disrupt the ritual with combined blood magic." "That's not a coincidence." Principal Weems sighed heavily. "Nothing involving an Addams is ever a coincidence. I've known that family for decades, they're cosmic magnets for the strange and dangerous." "Should we tell them about the prophecy sphere?" the other staff member asked. "If Potter and the Addams girl are mentioned specifically." "Not yet," Weems decided. "Let's confirm our suspicions first. Search the archives for anything related to Goody Fry, the convergence, or blood magic involving founding families." As the group spread out to begin searching, Harry felt Wednesday tense beside him. They were effectively trapped in their hiding place until the staff members left, which could take hours if they were conducting a thorough search. Enid, pressed uncomfortably against Harry's other side, mouthed, "What now?" Her eyes, he noticed, had taken on a distinct amber glow in the darkness, her werewolf traits emerging under stress. Xavier pointed upward, drawing their attention to a small decorative grate in the ceiling of their alcove, a ventilation shaft that might provide an escape route. Harry nodded, then carefully extracted his wand, pointing it at the grate. Silently, he cast an unlocking charm, feeling the magic flow through his wand with barely a whisper. The grate loosened but didn't fall, held in place by Wednesday's shadow control. One by one, they climbed into the narrow shaft, with Enid going first due to her enhanced agility. Harry went last, using a silent levitation charm to replace the grate behind them. The ventilation system was cramped and dusty, requiring them to crawl single file through the darkness. Enid led the way, her werewolf senses helping navigate the maze of shafts. After what felt like an eternity of uncomfortable crawling, they emerged through another grate into an empty classroom several corridors away from the library. That, Enid declared as she dusted herself off, was way less fun than the last time we had to escape through secret passages. "Remember the gargoyle incident, Wednesday?" Vividly, Wednesday replied, somehow managing to look perfectly composed despite their dusty escape route. "Though that involved more bloodshed and fewer cobwebs." Harry's mind was still processing what they'd learned and overheard. "We need to talk to your parents," he told Wednesday. "If the Addams bloodline is central to this convergence, they might know more about these ancient ones or the connections to Hogwarts founders." "Agreed," Wednesday said. "Though I suspect they'll be more excited than concerned about potential interdimensional entities using our blood as a gateway." Xavier checked his watch. "It's nearly midnight. The staff will be occupied in the archives for hours. We should be able to reach the East Wing guest quarters without being seen." As they made their way through Nevermore's shadowy corridors, Harry found himself walking beside Enid, who had been uncharacteristically quiet since their escape. "You okay?" he asked. She gave him a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. Just processing. When Wednesday's involved, things tend to get apocalyptic pretty quickly. I was hoping alumni weekend would just be awkward reunions and bad canapes, not interdimensional threats. I know the feeling, Harry said with genuine sympathy. I spent years hoping for a normal school year at Hogwarts. Never quite managed it. Is that why you two get along? Enid asked, curiosity overtaking her concern. You both attract magical disasters. Harry considered this. Maybe partly. But it's more that Wednesday doesn't care about Harry Potter, the boy who lived. She just sees me. Yeah, that's Wednesday, Enid said with a fond smile. Brutally honest and completely unimpressed by fame or status. It's weirdly refreshing. They reached the East Wing, where the Addams family had been given an ornate suite befitting their status as prominent alumni. Xavier stopped at the entrance to the wing. I should go check on my father, he explained. Make sure he's okay after what happened with his display. I'll meet you all at breakfast tomorrow. After he departed, Enid led them to the Addams suite. The door swung open before they could knock, revealing Lurch standing in the entrance like a macabre butler. We need to speak with Morticia and Gomez, Wednesday said without preamble. It's about the convergence. Lurch groaned informatively and stepped aside, allowing them to enter. The Addams suite had been transformed to match their home aesthetic, furniture rearranged to maximize shadows, strange specimens decorating the tables, and what appeared to be a functional Iron Maiden in the corner. Morticia and Gomez sat on a Victorian settee, looking surprisingly relaxed after the evening's chaos. Wednesday, Harry, Enid. Gomez greeted them enthusiastically. Come in, come in. We were just discussing tonight's delightful catastrophe. Such elegant use of blood magic, Morticia added. Crude in execution, but the concept was quite innovative. Wednesday quickly explained what they'd discovered in the archives, including the prophecy sphere and the references to ancient entities. Rather than looking concerned, Morticia and Gomez appeared increasingly intrigued. The convergence, Morticia mused, her eyes brightening with recognition. That's mentioned in the oldest Addams grimoires. A time when the original magical bloodlines would reconnect, reawakening powers that have lain dormant for generations. Our ancestors believed it would be a glorious return to primal magic, Gomez added, when the boundaries between worlds were more permeable. Permeable enough for ancient, probably malevolent entities to cross over and wreak havoc? Harry asked. Gomez beamed. Exactly. Isn't it exciting? Harry exchanged a look with Enid, who seemed equally alarmed by the Addams' enthusiasm for potential magical disaster. The prophecy specifically mentioned our blood mixing, Wednesday said, indicating herself and Harry. When we disrupted the ritual, something happened. Morticia studied them with new interest. The Potter line has its own ancient connections, through the Peveril family. The Deathly Hallows stories suggest they once communed with death itself, a power the Addams family would find quite compatible. Harry remembered his own experience with the Resurrection Stone, how it had allowed him to speak with the dead. So when our blood mixed, it created a connection that these entities could potentially use, Morticia confirmed. Though Briarwood's ritual was merely the beginning. For a full convergence, you would need representatives from all the founding bloodlines gathered at a place of magical significance. Like an alumni weekend at Nevermore, Enid said grimly, with representatives from other magical schools arriving tomorrow. The implications settled heavily in the room. Whatever Briarwood, or Goody Fry working through him, had started, it was building towards something bigger involving the gathering of magical bloodlines from various institutions. We need to warn Principal Weems about the full convergence, Harry said. And figure out how to stop it before these ancient entities can cross over. Stop it? Gomez looked genuinely puzzled. Why would we want to do that? The convergence is a once-in-a-millennium opportunity to witness primal magic in its purest form. Because, Harry explained patiently, based on past experience, ancient powerful entities returning rarely ends well for the general population. He has a point, darling, Morticia told her husband. Remember Great-Aunt Lacrimosa's attempt to summon the old ones? It was spectacular, certainly, but 3 villages disappeared, and we had to migrate the entire family to avoid the pitchforks and torches. Gomez sighed dramatically. I suppose we could help prevent total magical catastrophe. Though it seems a terrible waste of a perfectly good convergence. Wednesday, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly focused on something outside the window. We may not have much choice in the matter. Look. They all moved to the window, gazing out over Nevermore's grounds. In the moonlight, a strange mist had begun to gather, swirling in patterns that seemed almost deliberate. As they watched, the mist formed into tendrils that reached toward the academy buildings like searching fingers. The veil is already thinning, Morticia observed. The blood connection has created a partial bridge. Then we need to sever it, Harry said firmly. Before whatever's on the other side finds a way through. Wednesday turned to him, her dark eyes intense in the moonlight. Blood magic that's been started can only be resolved through blood. We'd need a counter-ritual of equal power. Which would require knowledge we don't currently possess, Morticia added. The original ritual books would be in the Addams family vault back home. Or, Enid suggested, in Principal Weem's private collection. She has artifacts and books from all the founding families. If anyone has information on reversing blood magic, it would be there. Gomez clapped his hands together decisively. Then it's settled. We'll break into the principal's office, find ancient forbidden knowledge, and perform a potentially catastrophic counter-ritual. What a splendid way to spend alumni weekend. Harry couldn't help but smile at Gomez's enthusiasm for what most would consider a dire situation. The Addams approach to crisis was strangely refreshing after years of dealing with the wizarding world's tendency toward either panic or denial. We should rest first, Wednesday suggested practically. The convergence won't reach its peak until tomorrow night, based on the astronomical references in the prophecy. We'll need our strength. As they prepared to leave, Morticia placed a hand on Harry's arm. Harry, dear, you should know that blood connections like the one you formed with Wednesday don't simply disappear, even if we manage to stop the convergence. You've become linked to the Addams family in ways that will manifest beyond this crisis. What does that mean exactly? Harry asked, uncertain whether to be concerned or intrigued. Morticia smiled enigmatically. The Addams blood carries certain gifts. Death magic, shadow manipulation, prophetic dreams involving elaborate torture scenarios. Nothing to worry about. Right, Harry said faintly. Looking forward to it. As they left the Addams suite, the strange mist outside grew thicker, writhing against the windows like something alive and hungry. Whatever was coming through the thinning veil between worlds, Harry had a feeling it wasn't going to wait politely for them to figure out a counter-ritual. The convergence had begun, and time was running out. Morning brought no respite from the strange phenomena affecting Nevermore Academy. Harry woke to find frost patterns on his window that resembled skeletal hands reaching inward. The mist they'd observed the night before had thickened into a fog that clung to the grounds, occasionally forming shapes that disappeared when viewed directly. He found Wednesday already awake, sitting cross-legged on her bed, surrounded by ancient texts she'd somehow acquired overnight. Sleep well? She asked without looking up. Not really, Harry admitted. Had dreams about voices calling from the other side of a veil. This caught her attention. What did they say? Harry hesitated. Nothing specific. Just, calling my name. And yours. Wednesday nodded as if this confirmed a theory. The blood connection is strengthening. The veil thins further. She held up one of the books. According to this, we have until midnight before the convergence reaches its peak. When the moon aligns with Saturn and Venus forms a conjunction with Mars. Of course, Harry said dryly. Magical catastrophes always wait for dramatic astronomical alignments. A hint of amusement flickered across Wednesday's face. The universe has a flair for the theatrical. The door burst open as Enid rushed in, still in pajamas printed with cartoon wolves. "Guys! You need to see this." They followed her to the common room window, which overlooked the central courtyard. Dozens of students stood frozen in place, unmoving, their eyes fixed on the sky. Above them, the clouds had formed an unnatural spiral, slowly rotating around a central point directly above Nevermore's main tower. "It's happening all over campus," Enid explained breathlessly. "People just stopping. Principal Weems is trying to snap them out of it, but nothing's working." Harry studied the students below. "They look like they're in some kind of trance." "They're listening," Wednesday said quietly. "To the voices from beyond the veil." A chill ran down Harry's spine. "Why aren't we affected?" "The Addams blood protects you now," Wednesday replied. "And Enid's werewolf nature gives her natural resistance to certain magical influences." Before they could discuss further, Xavier appeared in the doorway, looking harried. "There you are. Principal Weems called an emergency meeting. The representatives from other magical schools have arrived, and things are getting weird." "Weird how?" Harry asked. "The Hogwarts professor who arrived this morning is speaking in tongues, the Ilvermorny representatives can't stop drawing strange symbols, and the Beauxbatons headmistress is sleepwalking through the halls," Xavier explained rapidly. "Also, my father's genealogical display has reassembled itself in the Great Hall despite being destroyed last night." They hurried through the corridors, passing more tranced students and harried staff members attempting to maintain order. In the entrance hall, they found Principal Weems' in tense conversation with a familiar figure that made Harry stop short. "Professor McGonagall." The Hogwarts headmistress turned, her usually stern face showing relief at the sight of him. "Potter. Thank heavens. Perhaps you can make sense of what's happening here." Minerva McGonagall looked distinctly out of place in Nevermore's Gothic surroundings, her emerald robes and Scottish accent a stark reminder of Hogwarts. Yet there was something off about her, her eyes seemed unfocused, and her normally perfect posture had a slight sway. "Professor, are you all right?" Harry asked, concerned. "I've been better," she admitted. "Since arriving on the grounds, I've been experiencing episodes. Moments where I find myself speaking words I don't recognize." "Blood calls to blood," Wednesday observed. "As a representative of Hogwarts, you're connected to the convergence through the founding bloodlines." McGonagall studied Wednesday with sharp interest. "You must be Miss Addams. Your family's reputation precedes you, even at Hogwarts." "All good things, I hope," Gomez interjected, appearing suddenly with Morticia at his side. Both were dressed in formal black attire that somehow managed to look both elegant and slightly menacing. "That would depend on one's definition of good," McGonagall replied diplomatically. Principal Weems gestured for them all to follow her to a private meeting room off the main hall. Inside, representatives from various magical institutions sat around a large table, many showing signs of the strange influence affecting the school. A tall, distinguished woman Harry recognized as Madame Maxime from Beauxbatons was drawing complex symbols on a parchment without seeming aware of her actions. Two wizards wearing the blue robes of Ilvermorny kept glancing nervously at shadows in the corners of the room. "As I was explaining," Weems continued once they were all seated, "we believe Nevermore is experiencing the effects of an ancient convergence event, a realignment of magical bloodlines that is weakening the barriers between our world and somewhere else. The prophecy sphere confirms it," Harry added. "Something about the blood of the wise eagle mingling with the blood of the deathless shadow." McGonagall's eyes sharpened. "Ravenclaw and the Addams line." The connection was documented in restricted texts at Hogwarts, but considered more legend than fact. "I assure you," Morticia said smoothly, "the Addams connection to Ravenclaw is quite factual. Our family grimoires contain correspondence between my ancestor Desdemona Addams and Rowena herself, discussing experimental death magic that was considered too extreme even for Hogwarts curriculum." One of the Ilvermorny representatives leaned forward. Our records show similar connections between the Addams line and Isolde Sayre, Ilvermorny's founder. There are sealed accounts of rituals attempted on school grounds that nearly tore the veil between worlds. Which brings us to our current predicament, Weems said. The convergence is accelerating. At midnight, when the astronomical alignment reaches its peak, we believe the veil will thin enough for whatever entities are on the other side to cross over completely. These ancient ones mentioned in the prophecy, McGonagall said. What do we know about them? A heavy silence fell over the room. Finally, it was Morticia who answered. They are the original sources of magic, she explained, her voice taking on a reverent quality. Beings that existed before human civilization, who taught the first magical families their craft. Some traditions call them gods, others demons. The Addams family has always known them as the patrons. In exchange for their gifts, they demanded worship and sacrifice, Wednesday continued. When organized magical education began, institutions like Hogwarts and later Nevermore, their influence waned. The structured approach to magic gradually sealed them away behind a veil of forgetting. And now they want back in, Harry concluded. Using the blood connections of their original family lines as conduits. The room grew colder as he spoke, shadows deepening in the corners. Outside, the unnatural fog pressed against the windows like something alive. We need to perform a counter-ritual, Gomez declared. Sever the connection before midnight. That would require access to original texts from all the founding families, the Beauxbatons headmistress said, briefly lucid. Materials that haven't been seen for centuries. Not necessarily, Principal Weems said slowly. Nevermore's forbidden archives contain copies of many founding documents. And as headmistress, I have access to artifacts that might help, including blood samples from the original families preserved for just such an emergency. Blood samples? Harry repeated, not sure he'd heard correctly. Weems smiled thinly. Nevermore has always been prepared for apocalyptic scenarios, Mr. Potter. It's part of our charter. McGonagall nodded. Hogwarts maintains similar precautions, though we're less enthusiastic about it. As the group discussed preparations for a counter-ritual, Harry noticed Wednesday watching him with unusual intensity. What? He asked quietly. Your scar, she replied. It's glowing. Harry reached up to touch his lightning bolt scar, feeling it warm beneath his fingers. He hadn't felt any pain from it since Voldemort's death, but now there was a strange tingling sensation. The lightning-marked one, he murmured, remembering the prophecy. Great. Just when I thought I was done with prophecies and chosen one status. Wednesday's expression remained neutral, but he detected a hint of sympathy in her eyes. Destiny has a way of finding those who run from it. Speaking from experience, he asked. She almost smiled. Let's just say you're not the only one who's tried to escape predetermined roles. Their conversation was interrupted as the room suddenly plunged into darkness. The windows, which had been showing late morning light, now revealed a sky as dark as midnight. It's starting, Morticia said, her voice oddly calm. The convergence is accelerating. Lights flickered back on, though dimmer than before. Principal Weems stood decisively. We need to act now. Wednesday, Harry, since your blood connection triggered this acceleration, you'll be central to the counter-ritual. The rest of you, gather your strongest practitioners. We'll need representatives from each founding bloodline. As the group dispersed to prepare, Enid pulled Harry and Wednesday aside. While they're setting up the official counter-ritual, we should investigate Dr. Briarwood's quarters. If he was possessed by this Goody Fry person, there might be clues about what the Ancient Ones are really after. Good thinking, Harry agreed. A backup plan is always useful when dealing with potentially world-ending magical events. And Briarwood's quarters are directly below the astronomy tower, Xavier added, joining them. Which, according to the convergence texts, will be the focal point of the veil thinning at midnight. The four slipped away from the main group, navigating through increasingly strange conditions. The very fabric of Nevermore seemed to be changing, staircases rearranged themselves without warning, portraits spoke in ancient languages, and at one point they passed a corridor where gravity had reversed, with students walking on the ceiling. Magical reality is breaking down, Wednesday observed. The barriers between dimensions are becoming porous. They reached Briarwood's quarters without major incident, though Harry had to use Alohomora twice when the lock kept morphing into different mechanisms. Inside, they found evidence of the Doctor's true pursuits, walls covered with complex diagrams of family trees, ancient texts spread across every surface, and a collection of objects that radiated dark magical energy. "Look at this," Xavier called from the desk. Correspondence with Lucius Malfoy going back months. They were planning this convergence deliberately. Harry examined the letters. Malfoy was providing information about Hogwarts' founding bloodlines, focusing specifically on descendants of Slytherin and Ravenclaw. "And this," Enid said, holding up a small black book, "appears to be Goody Fry's original grimoire. The pages are soaked in blood magic." Wednesday took the grimoire, flipping through its pages with careful attention. "This isn't just about bringing back the ancient ones," she said after a moment. "It's about merging with them. Becoming living vessels for their power. Possession on a mass scale," Harry realized. "Using the descendants of the founding families as hosts. Which explains the trance-like states," Enid added. "They're being prepared as vessels." Xavier pointed to a star chart on the wall. "According to this, the convergence reaches its peak at exactly midnight, when the astronomical alignment creates a direct channel between dimensions. We have less than 12 hours. Harry felt his scar tingle again, stronger this time. "We need to get this information to the others. The counter-ritual needs to account for the possession aspect." As they turned to leave, the room suddenly shifted around them. The walls seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting like lungs. The floor rippled beneath their feet. "Reality distortion," Wednesday said calmly. "We should hurry." They navigated back through a Nevermore that grew increasingly unrecognizable. Corridors stretched impossibly long, then contracted without warning. Rooms appeared where none had been before, filled with strange artifacts or ominous figures that vanished when approached directly. By the time they reached the Great Hall, the transformation was impossible to ignore. The ceiling, which had mimicked Hogwarts' enchanted sky, now showed not stars but what appeared to be enormous eyes blinking down at them. The walls pulsed with veins of glowing energy that followed the patterns of the rebuilt genealogical display in the center of the room. Principal Weems and the other school representatives had established a ritual circle using artifacts from each institution. McGonagall had placed the sorting hat in the Hogwarts position, while Madame Maxime contributed what appeared to be a silver flower that constantly changed its bloom. The Ilvermorny representatives had positioned 4 small statues representing their house mascots. In the center of the circle stood Morticia and Gomez, directing preparations with surprising expertise. "Ah, children." Gomez greeted them enthusiastically. "Just in time. We're about to attempt an ancient counter-ritual that has approximately a 30% chance of success and a 70% chance of spectacularly violent failure. We found Briarwood's grimoire," Wednesday said, handing the black book to her mother. "The convergence isn't just opening a doorway, it's preparing vessels for possession." Morticia studied the grimoire with professional interest. "This complicates matters. The counter-ritual we've prepared would close the dimensional breach but wouldn't address the possession component. Unless," McGonagall suggested, "we modify the ritual to include a protective element for the bloodlines involved." "A magical inoculation," Weems nodded. "Using the original blood samples to create immunity rather than conductivity." As the adults discussed modifications to the ritual, Harry pulled Wednesday aside. "There's something I don't understand. Why did our blood specifically trigger this acceleration? What's special about the Potter line?" Wednesday considered him thoughtfully. "Your ancestors created the Deathly Hallows, objects that could command death itself. The Addams family has always existed in the space between life and death. When our blood mixed, it created a perfect conduit between realms. So we started this, Harry said grimly. Which means we need to finish it. Indeed, Morticia interrupted, having overheard. The modified ritual requires a focal point, two representatives of the key bloodlines whose combined magic can seal the breach while simultaneously protecting the vulnerable descendants. Harry met Wednesday's eyes. Us. She nodded once, her expression unreadable but her eyes showing a determination that matched his own. The preparations continued as the hour approached midnight. Outside, the unnatural storm intensified, lightning and impossible color striking the grounds. More students and staff fell into trances, their eyes taking on an eerie glow as they stood motionless, waiting for something only they could hear. The remaining active members of each magical institution took positions around the Great Hall, establishing protective barriers and preparing for whatever might emerge when the veil thinned completely. Harry recognized several defensive spells from his DA teaching days, though the Nevermore faculty used techniques he'd never seen before, weaving shadows and strange energies into their protections. As midnight approached, Harry and Wednesday took their positions at the center of the ritual circle. Around them, representatives of each founding bloodline stood at cardinal points, McGonagall for Hogwarts, Weems for Nevermore, the Ilvermorny headmaster for his school, and Madame Maxime for Beauxbatons. Morticia and Gomez would guide the ritual, their experience with ancient magic making them the logical choice. The connection must be severed at the exact moment of convergence, Morticia explained. When the veil is thinnest, it's also most vulnerable to being sealed permanently. And if we fail? Harry asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. Then the Ancient Ones return in force, Gomez replied with inappropriate cheerfulness. Civilization as we know it ends, and a new age of primal magic begins. Either way, it'll be spectacular. Darling, Morticia gently admonished, focus on the ritual. As the modified preparations neared completion, a commotion at the entrance to the Great Hall drew everyone's attention. Dr. Briarwood, or what remained of him, stood in the doorway. His body seemed partially transparent, multiple faces shifting beneath his skin. When he spoke, it was with a chorus of voices. You cannot stop what has already begun, the entity declared. The vessels are prepared. The way is open. We return to claim what was always ours. Behind him floated dozens of entranced students and staff, their eyes glowing with the same unearthly light that emanated from Briarwood. Goody Fry, I presume? Wednesday said coolly. Or whatever amalgamation of entities you've become. The Briarwood thing smiled with too many teeth. The witch you knew as Goody Fry was merely our first modern vessel. We are the patrons, the original sources of all your magic. And we have come to reclaim our descendants. The possessed crowd surged forward, only to be repelled by the protective barriers established around the ritual space. The collision sent sparks of wild magic cascading through the hall. Begin the ritual. Weems commanded. We're out of time. Outside, the sky split open, revealing not stars but what appeared to be an enormous eye gazing down upon Nevermore. The genealogical display in the center of the ritual circle pulsed with increasing energy, bloodlines lighting up one by one as the connections activated. Morticia began the incantation, her voice carrying power that raised goosebumps on Harry's arms. The words weren't in any language he recognized, older than Latin, older perhaps than human language itself. Gomez joined her, their voices twining together as they directed the ritual energies. The representatives at the cardinal points added their own magical signatures, creating a complex weave of power that centered on Harry and Wednesday. Following instructions they'd been given, Harry and Wednesday clasped hands, reopening their healing cuts so their blood mingled once more. The sensation was immediate and overwhelming, a rush of connection not just to each other but to something vast and ancient that reached toward them hungrily from beyond the veil. Harry felt his scar burning now, not with the familiar pain of Voldemort's connection but with a different, deeper magic. Images flashed through his mind, ancient rituals in stone circles, magical knowledge flowing from inhuman entities to the first human practitioners, a schism as some humans sought to codify and control the wild power they'd been given. Beside him, Wednesday was experiencing her own visions, her normally impassive face showing rare emotion as the weight of ancestral memory flooded through her. Now. Morticia called as midnight struck and the astronomical alignment reached its peak. Harry and Wednesday raised their joined hands, channeling the combined power of their bloodlines through the connection they'd formed. The counter-ritual surged through them, a torrent of magic unlike anything Harry had experienced before, raw and primal yet focused by their shared intent. The veil between worlds thinned to transparency, and for a breathtaking moment, Harry could see through to the other side, a realm of swirling energies and ancient consciousnesses that had once been worshipped as gods. They reached toward the opening with tendrils of pure magical force, searching for the vessels they'd prepared. But the counter-ritual redirected their approach. Instead of opening wider, the veil began to reseal itself, the edges of the breach knitting together as the combined blood magic created a barrier the Ancient Ones couldn't penetrate. The Briarwood Thing screamed in frustration, the multiple voices within him howling in ancient languages. He fought against the protective barriers, his form shifting and distorting as the entities within struggled to maintain their foothold in the physical world. "You cannot banish us forever," the voices roared. "We are magic itself. We exist in the blood of every practitioner." "Not banishing," Wednesday corrected, her voice strained but steady. "Containing. Returning you to your proper place." The counter-ritual reached its climax as the veil began to close completely. The Ancient Ones, sensing their defeat, made one final desperate attempt. A surge of pure magical energy shot from Briarwood toward Harry and Wednesday, attempting to corrupt the blood connection they'd established. Harry felt the attack as a cold invasion trying to twist their magic toward destruction rather than protection. Acting on instinct, he focused on the feeling he'd experienced when casting his Patronus, not just happiness, but connection, belonging, purpose. The feeling he'd discovered with the Addams family and strengthened through his bond with Wednesday. Beside him, Wednesday did something similar, drawing on her own sources of power, her family's ancient magic, her connection to darkness not as something evil but as a natural part of the balance. Together, they redirected the attack back toward the breach, using the Ancient One's own power to seal their banishment. The veil closed with a concussive force that knocked everyone in the great hall to the ground. When Harry managed to stand again, the sky outside had returned to normal. The possessed students and staff were collapsing as the controlling influence released them. Dr. Briarwood's body lay empty on the floor, the possessing entities gone. The ritual circle still glowed with residual energy, but the dangerous connection had been severed. The convergence had been contained. Wednesday stood beside Harry, their hands still joined, blood drying between their palms. For once, her expression was openly thoughtful as she studied him. "We make an effective team," she said finally. Harry nodded, oddly speechless. The experience of channeling such ancient magic had left him both exhausted and exhilarated. "Is it over?" Enid asked, approaching cautiously with Xavier beside her. "The immediate threat is contained," Morticia answered, joining them with Gomez at her side. "The veil has been resealed, and the possessions reversed." However, Weems added as she and the other school representatives approached, the connections revealed by this convergence cannot be undone. The founding bloodlines have been awakened to their shared heritage. "Meaning what, exactly?" McGonagall asked. Gomez grinned widely. "Meaning, dear lady, that the magical world just got a lot more interesting. The old barriers between different magical traditions have been weakened. Knowledge that was kept separate for centuries can now flow more freely between our institutions." "And the blood connection between Harry and Wednesday?" Enid asked. "Permanent," Morticia said with a slight smile. "They are now magically linked in ways that will continue to manifest." Harry looked at Wednesday, who returned his gaze with her usual deadpan expression, though something new lingered in her eyes, a recognition of their shared experience and the bond it had created. "Could be worse," he said with a small smile. "Indeed," she replied. You could have been magically linked to Enid. Hey! Enid protested, though she was smiling too, relief evident in her expression. As the cleanup began and the various magical representatives started discussing the implications of what had happened, Harry found himself standing with Wednesday near one of the great hall's windows. Outside, dawn was breaking over Nevermore, the grounds returning to their normal Gothic beauty without the unnatural mist. "What happens now?" he asked quietly. Wednesday considered this. "Now we have breakfast. I understand the dining hall serves particularly good blood pudding on Sundays." Harry laughed, surprised by her deliberately mundane answer. "I meant with us. With this connection. With everything we've learned about the magical world's shared history. The Addams family has always existed at intersections," Wednesday replied after a moment. "Between life and death, between old magic and new, between worlds. Now you share that position. And how do you feel about that?" Harry asked, genuinely curious about her perspective. Wednesday looked at him directly, her dark eyes unreadable. "I find your company less tedious than most people's. And your magical abilities are adequately compatible with mine." Coming from Wednesday, this was practically a declaration of eternal friendship. "High praise," Harry said with a smile. "I feel the same way." As they turned to join the others, Harry felt something different within himself, a new awareness of shadows, a deeper connection to the magic that had always been part of him. The Addams blood now mingled with his own had changed him, but not in the way Voldemort's connection had. This was an expansion rather than a corruption. Whatever came next, he wouldn't face it alone. He had found a new family in the Addamses, unexpected friends at Nevermore, and a particular connection with Wednesday that defied simple categorization. For someone who had spent his life marked by prophecy and defined by others' expectations, it felt remarkably like freedom. Chapter 3, When Magic Worlds Collide. 3 weeks after the Nevermore convergence, Harry woke up screaming. He sat bolt upright in his bed at the Addams family mansion, sweat-drenched and gasping. The dream had been so vivid, ancient voices whispering, a tear in reality, and something massive forcing its way through. "Bad dreams again," came Wednesday's voice from the doorway. Harry jumped, his hand automatically reaching for his wand. "Do you always lurk outside people's bedrooms at?" He glanced at the clock, 3 in the morning. "Not always," she replied, entering without invitation. She wore a long black nightgown that made her look like a Victorian ghost. "Only when they're projecting magical nightmares throughout the house." Harry blinked in confusion. "I was projecting your shadow," Wednesday explained, pointing to the wall where Harry's shadow stretched impossibly large, writhing with a life of its own. "It's been screaming for the past hour. Pugsley recorded it for his nightmare collection." "Sorry," Harry muttered, focusing until his shadow returned to normal. The Addams blood in his system had manifested in unexpected ways since their return from Nevermore. Shadow manipulation came naturally now, though controlling it during emotional moments remained challenging. Wednesday perched on the edge of his bed, studying him with clinical interest. "The same dream?" Harry nodded. "Something got through when we closed the veil. Something's hiding in the shadows between worlds, gathering strength. And calling to you through our blood connection," Wednesday added, not a question but a statement of fact. "Do you feel it too?" Harry asked. Her expression remained unchanged, but Harry had learned to read the subtle shifts in her eyes, a slight widening that indicated surprise. "You're getting better at that." "At what?" "Reading me." She said it like an accusation. Harry shrugged. "Side effect of sharing blood magic, I guess." "You didn't answer my question." Wednesday was silent for a moment. "Yes, I feel it too. Dreams of something ancient watching us. Waiting." Outside, thunder rumbled across London's sky. The weather had been unnaturally stormy since their return from Nevermore, with strange lightning that sometimes flashed in colors no lightning should be. "We need to talk to your parents," Harry said, throwing back the covers and reaching for a shirt. They're in the cemetery, Wednesday replied. Harry paused. It's 3 in the morning. Tuesday nights are their romantic moonlight grave-digging date, she explained as if this were perfectly normal. They're excavating a 15th-century necromancer. Mother wants to consult about our situation. Right, Harry said, no longer surprised by Addams' family recreational activities. Then we should contact Nevermore, and probably Hogwarts too. If something did get through the veil, already done, Wednesday interrupted. Principal Weems sent this an hour ago. She handed him a letter written on midnight blue parchment that seemed to shimmer with its own light. The handwriting was elegant but hurried. Miss Addams, similar phenomena reported at all major magical institutions. Sleepwalking students drawing the same symbol. Weather disturbances centered on ley line intersections. The veil thinned again last night during the lunar eclipse. Representatives from Hogwarts, Ilvermorny, and Beauxbatons arriving tomorrow. Bring Mr. Potter. The blood connection must be addressed before whatever emerged from the convergence grows stronger. The council convenes at Nevermore at midnight tomorrow. Principal Weems P.S. Your mother's suggestion regarding grave excavation is ill-advised. The necromancer in question is better left undisturbed. A council, Harry said, running a hand through his perpetually messy hair. That sounds serious. The magical institutions working together is unprecedented, Wednesday agreed. Mother is ecstatic about the potential for catastrophe. Harry couldn't help smiling slightly. The Addams' approach to potential apocalypse was perversely refreshing after years of the wizarding world's panic and denial. We should wake Pugsley and prepare to leave, he suggested, reaching for his jeans. Pugsley won't be joining us, Wednesday replied. He's been banned from Nevermore after the incident with the laboratory frogs and the experimental growth potion. When did that happen? Harry asked, puzzled. He was with us during alumni weekend. Yesterday, Wednesday clarified. Mother and father took him for a visit. Principal Weems was displeased. Harry shook his head, marveling at the Addams family's talent for chaos. Fine. You and me, then. We should pack a deafening crash from downstairs interrupted him, followed by what sounded like breaking glass and maniacal laughter. That would be Uncle Fester testing his new cannon in the drawing room, Wednesday explained calmly. Harry grabbed his wand. Is the house on fire? Most likely. They hurried downstairs to find the drawing room indeed ablaze, with Uncle Fester dancing gleefully among the flames. A massive iron cannon had blasted a hole through the wall, revealing the stormy night outside. Harry. Wednesday. Fester greeted them enthusiastically, seemingly unbothered by his burning clothes. Come see my new toy. It fires cursed cannonballs that explode into spectral bats. Uncle Fester, Wednesday said evenly, we need the house intact. We're leaving for Nevermore in the morning. Nevermore. Wonderful. Fester clapped his hands, sending sparks flying from his fingertips. I'll come too. I can bring the cannon. No, Harry and Wednesday said in unison. While Wednesday explained to her disappointed uncle why bringing siege weapons to a magical council meeting might be inappropriate, Harry extinguished the flames with a well-practiced aguamenti. After living with the Addams family for months, his firefighting skills had improved considerably. As they cleaned up the destruction, things scurried in with a letter clutched in its fingers. The disembodied hand had become Harry's unlikely friend, often bringing him tea when he was up late studying Addams' family grimoires. Thanks, Thing, Harry said, taking the letter. The Hogwarts seal made his heart beat faster. Opening it, he recognized Hermione's neat handwriting. Harry, McGonagall's called an emergency order meeting. Something came through during the Nevermore incident, something that's affecting magical sites worldwide. Ron and I will meet you at Nevermore tomorrow. Don't try to handle this alone, though I suspect you already are. The Addams blood magic you underwent has the Ministry in an uproar. Kingsley's holding them off, but be prepared for questions. Lots of questions. Also, your eyes turned completely black during our last fire call. Might want to look into that. Be careful, Hermione. Harry instinctively conjured a small mirror, examining his eyes. They looked normal now, still green, still his mother's eyes, but occasionally since the blood mixing, they'd shifted to solid black when he used certain types of magic. It's the Addams blood, Wednesday said, reading the letter over his shoulder without permission. The physical manifestations are increasing. Mother will be thrilled. The ministry won't be, Harry replied, thinking of the inevitable bureaucratic nightmare. The wizarding world had barely adjusted to his new living arrangements with the Addamses. Blood magic that altered the boy who lived would cause pandemonium. By the time Morticia and Gomez returned from their cemetery date, covered in grave dirt and looking blissfully happy, Harry and Wednesday had packed for Nevermore and contained the worst of Uncle Fester's destruction. Children. Gomez greeted them enthusiastically. You're up early. Wonderful news, we found the necromancer. Or what's left of him. Just bones now, but such magnificent bones. We need to leave for Nevermore immediately, Wednesday informed her parents. Something emerged during the convergence. The magical institutions are forming a council. Morticia's eyes gleamed with interest. A cross-institutional magical crisis. How delightful. And right when the family vault finally delivered the ancient summoning texts I requested. Summoning texts? Harry asked cautiously. For communicating with entities from beyond the veil, Morticia explained, brushing grave dirt from her dress. If something did emerge during the convergence, these texts might help identify it. The Addams family has extensive experience with interdimensional visitors. Usually ending in bloodshed and property damage, Wednesday added. The best kind of family gatherings. Gomez declared proudly. Despite the hour, the Addams family sprang into action with alarming efficiency. Lurch packed their bags while Grandmama prepared travel potions that smelled strongly of sulfur and nightshade. By sunrise, they were ready to depart. We'll take the family hearse, Gomez announced. Nothing like road tripping to an apocalyptic magical council meeting. Harry, who had expected to travel by more conventional magical means, found himself squeezed into an antique black hearse alongside Wednesday, her parents, and a suspicious number of wooden crates labeled, "Caution, contents unpredictable." The family hearse is faster than it looks, Wednesday told him as they pulled away from the mansion at what seemed like normal speed. It travels through the shadow roads. The what? Harry began, but his question was answered when Gomez pulled a lever on the dashboard. The world outside the windows blurred, then disappeared entirely. They were driving through absolute darkness, illuminated only by the hearse's headlights which cast beams that seemed to extend infinitely. Occasionally, shapes moved just beyond the light's reach, forms that made Harry's skin crawl with instinctive recognition of predators. The shadow roads, Morticia explained serenely. Pathways between places that exist in the spaces normal travelers never see. An Addams family secret for generations. Think of it as apparition for vehicles, Gomez added, driving with reckless enthusiasm through the nothingness. We'll reach Nevermore in no time. Harry glanced at Wednesday, who appeared completely unperturbed by traveling through what seemed to be another dimension. You could have warned me. Where's the fun in that? She replied, the barest hint of amusement in her eyes. The journey through the shadow roads took minutes rather than hours, though time felt strange in the darkness. When they finally emerged, the hearse was parked at Nevermore's front gates, and the sun was just setting, despite having left London at dawn. Time moves differently on the shadow roads, Wednesday explained, noticing Harry's confusion. Sometimes faster, sometimes slower. Occasionally sideways. Nevermore Academy looked even more gothic and imposing than Harry remembered. New gargoyles perched along the rooflines, their stone eyes following visitors with unnerving attention. The grounds themselves seemed charged with magical energy, grass growing in unnatural patterns that formed symbols when viewed from certain angles. Principal Weems met them at the entrance, looking significantly more stressed than during their previous visit. The Addams family, she greeted them with a mixture of resignation and relief. And Mr. Potter. Thank you for coming quickly. Wouldn't miss it for the world. Gomez declared, shaking her hand enthusiastically. Interdimensional crisis involving ancient entities and blood magic. Classic Addams scenario. Weems turned to Harry and Wednesday. The effects of your blood connection have been manifesting in unexpected ways. I assume you've experienced the changes. Harry nodded. Shadow manipulation, dream projection, occasional eye color changes. Nothing too dramatic. Yet, Wednesday added ominously. Weems led them into the academy, where the hallways buzzed with activity. Representatives from various magical institutions had already arrived, setting up in designated areas. Harry spotted Professor McGonagall deep in conversation with Madame Maxime from Beauxbatons, both looking uncharacteristically worried. Harry, a familiar voice called. Hermione rushed toward him, pulling him into a tight hug before stepping back to examine him critically. Your aura's completely different. The Addams blood has fundamentally altered your magical signature. Good to see you too, Hermione, Harry replied dryly. Ron appeared behind her, giving Harry a brotherly clap on the shoulder. Mate, you look, well, actually pretty normal considering you've been living with. He glanced nervously at the Addamses, a family with unique magical practices. The Addamses have been great, Harry said honestly. Different from the wizarding world, but in ways I've come to appreciate. Hermione's expression softened slightly. You do seem happier. More, yourself, somehow. Less broody, Ron agreed. Though the shadow thing is a bit creepy. He pointed to Harry's shadow, which had stretched toward Wednesday's without Harry consciously directing it. The council is gathering in the Great Hall, Weems interrupted. We should join them before the briefing begins. As they walked, Harry noticed Enid racing toward them, her rainbow-colored hair now featuring new electric blue streaks. Wednesday. Harry, she called, skidding to a halt before them. You're finally here. Things are getting super weird, half the werewolf students are sleepwalking during the day, the vampires can't stop drawing this symbol, and the sirens keep singing the same creepy melody. She thrust a paper toward them, showing a complex sigil that looked disturbingly familiar to Harry. This was in my dream, he murmured. The entity that got through was marked with this. The mark of Goody Fry, Morticia observed, studying the symbol. But altered. Combined with something older, something primal. The Ancient Ones, Wednesday concluded. They're using Goody Fry's vendetta as a vessel for their own return. The Great Hall of Nevermore had been transformed into a council chamber. A massive round table dominated the center, with representatives from each magical institution seated according to some ancient protocol. Maps and magical instruments covered the walls, monitoring disturbances worldwide. Harry recognized many faces, not just McGonagall and Madame Maxime, but Kingsley Shacklebolt representing the British Ministry, Fleur's father for the French Ministry, and various other dignitaries from magical governments worldwide. The situation is unprecedented, Principal Weems began once everyone was seated. During the convergence 3 weeks ago, we believed we had successfully resealed the veil between worlds. We were wrong. A murmur ran through the gathered representatives. Something emerged, Weems continued. Something that has been affecting magical sites and bloodlines connected to the founding families. The effects began subtly but are accelerating. Kingsley stood, his deep voice commanding attention. Similar phenomena have been reported worldwide. Magical creatures behaving erratically. Weather patterns defying both natural and magical control. And most concerning, magical individuals with connections to founding bloodlines experiencing personality changes, blackouts, and in some cases, apparent possession. Like what happened with Dr. Briarwood, Harry said. Exactly, McGonagall confirmed. But on a potentially much larger scale. Whatever entity emerged during the convergence is gathering strength, using the awakened bloodline connections as conduits. Vincent Thorpe, who had recovered from his magical display being hijacked, approached the table with a modified version of his genealogical matrix. The bloodline connections we mapped have become active channels of magical energy. Something is drawing power through these connections, concentrating it at specific locations. He activated the display, showing a world map with glowing lines connecting various magical institutions. The brightest convergence points were at Hogwarts, Nevermore, and, surprisingly, the Addams family mansion. The three strongest nexus points in the Awakened network, Vincent explained. Each representing a different magical tradition that the Ancient Ones once influenced directly. So what exactly are these Ancient Ones? Ron asked what many were thinking. Dark wizards? Gods? Demons? All of the above and none, Morticia answered, drawing attention with her elegant certainty. They existed before such distinctions. The original sources of magic who taught the first human practitioners their craft. In exchange for worship and sacrifice, Wednesday added. When humans developed structured magical systems, wands, incantations, organized instruction, they no longer needed direct guidance from these entities. So the Ancient Ones were, forgotten, Hermione realized. Sealed away behind a veil of structured magic that eventually became institutions like Hogwarts and Nevermore. And now they want back in, Harry concluded. Using the blood connections between founding families as their pathway. Gomez nodded enthusiastically. Precisely. A classic case of vengeful primordial entities attempting to reclaim their former influence. We had something similar at the family reunion of 1954. Distant cousin Ophelia accidentally summoned what we thought was Great-Uncle Eustace but turned out to be an interdimensional being wearing his skin. Marvelous party conversation. The council members stared at him with expressions ranging from horror to fascination. The key question, Principal Weems said, redirecting the conversation, is how to stop this entity before it fully materializes. All eyes turned to Harry and Wednesday. Your blood connection triggered the acceleration, McGonagall stated. Logic suggests it may be central to stopping it as well. The blood bond works both ways, Morticia confirmed. Just as it created a pathway, it could establish a barrier, if properly focused. But we'd need to identify exactly what came through, Wednesday said. The convergence involved multiple entities attempting to cross over. We need to know which one succeeded and what it wants. I think I know how to find out, Harry said, remembering something from his study of Addams' grimoires. Dream walking. If this entity is connecting to us through dreams, we can follow that connection back to the source. Wednesday raised an eyebrow, looking almost impressed. Risky. Potentially fatal. Exactly the approach an Addams would suggest. Is it possible? Kingsley asked, looking between Harry and the Addamses. With the proper preparations, Morticia confirmed. The Addams family has practiced dream walking for generations. Combined with Mr. Potter's experience with mental connections and Wednesday's natural affinity for darkness, they might successfully trace the entity. While they do that, we need teams at each nexus point, Weems decided. Hogwarts, Nevermore, and the Addams mansion. If the entity attempts full materialization, those locations will be ground zero. The council quickly organized into action teams. McGonagall would lead the Hogwarts defense, with Ron, Hermione, and several Order members returning to Britain immediately. Weems would coordinate Nevermore's protections with help from the other magical institutions. Gomez and Morticia would return to secure the Addams mansion, taking Enid with them for her werewolf sensory abilities. And us? Harry asked, looking at Wednesday. You and Wednesday will attempt the dream walking here, under controlled conditions, Weems explained. Our infirmary has specialized equipment for monitoring unusual magical states. We'll need specific ingredients, Wednesday said. Ancient ones respond to certain offerings. Already prepared, Morticia assured her, producing a small black velvet pouch. Blood moss from the family greenhouse. Grave dirt from a hanged sorcerer. Essence of nightmare, distilled during the dark of the moon. And a drop of living shadow from the family's personal collection. Perfect, Wednesday said, taking the pouch. Harry caught Hermione's concerned expression as preparations continued. She pulled him aside while Wednesday consulted with her mother about the dream-walking ritual. Harry, are you sure about this? Hermione asked quietly. Dream-walking is incredibly dangerous magic. The Department of Mysteries has classified it as potentially fatal. We don't have much choice, Harry replied. Whatever came through is connected to both of us through the blood bond. We need to identify it before it grows strong enough to fully materialize. Hermione studied his face. You've changed, you know. Not just the shadow manipulation or the occasional black eyes. There's something different about your magic now. More primal. Harry nodded. The Addams blood changed me, but not like Voldemort's connection did. This feels more like expansion. Like accessing parts of magic that were always there but I couldn't see before. Just be careful, she urged. The Addamses approach danger differently than most people. They seem to welcome it. Maybe that's not always a bad thing, Harry suggested. Fear of darkness can be as limiting as darkness itself. Hermione's eyes widened slightly. That sounds like something Wednesday would say. Harry smiled. I guess she's rubbing off on me. As the council dispersed to their assigned tasks, Harry found himself alone with Wednesday in a quiet corner of the Great Hall. She was examining the contents of her mother's pouch with professional interest. Having second thoughts, she asked without looking up. About dream-walking into the consciousness of an ancient entity that wants to possess people and potentially destroy modern magic as we know it? Harry replied. No, seems perfectly reasonable. The ghost of a smile flickered across Wednesday's face. Your sarcasm has improved. Another benefit of Addams' blood, no doubt. Among other things, Harry agreed, unconsciously manipulating his shadow to form shapes on the wall. It was becoming as natural as breathing. The dream-walking ritual requires complete trust between participants, Wednesday said, suddenly serious. Our minds will be linked more deeply than the blood bond alone. You'll see things in my consciousness that I don't show anyone. And you'll see mine, Harry acknowledged. Not the first time someone's been in my head, though hopefully less painful than Voldemort or Snape's legilimency. Wednesday studied him with those intense dark eyes. Pain is relative. Some truths hurt more than any cruciatus curse. Harry met her gaze steadily. I trust you, Wednesday. After everything we've faced together, that's one thing I'm certain about. Something shifted in her expression, the barest softening around her eyes, gone almost before he could register it. Then let's prepare. We dream walk at midnight, when the veil is thinnest. The Nevermore infirmary bore little resemblance to Hogwarts' hospital wing. Instead of clean, clinical beds, it featured ornate Victorian fainting couches, cabinets filled with bubbling potions in skull-shaped bottles, and medical equipment that looked like it belonged in a gothic horror novel. We've prepared the dream-walking chamber, Nevermore's nurse explained, leading Harry and Wednesday to a separate room dominated by two elaborate beds positioned in a circle of runes. These monitoring devices will track your vital signs and magical output. If either drops below safe levels, we can administer the awakening potion. That won't be necessary, Wednesday stated flatly. Humor us, Miss Addams, Principal Weems said, entering with Xavier and Enid. Dream-walking is dangerous under normal circumstances. Attempting to connect with an ancient entity raises the stakes considerably. I thought you were going to the Addams mansion. Harry asked Enid. Change of plans, she explained. Xavier's dad discovered something about the entity's signature. It's targeting werewolves specifically as potential vessels. Apparently, our dual nature makes us more compatible hosts. Which means Enid might help identify what we're dealing with, Xavier added. She's been experiencing the dreams too, but from a different perspective. Enid nodded, uncharacteristically serious. All the werewolf students have been drawing this same symbol in our sleep. She showed them her arm, where the strange sigil had been scratched into her skin. It feels like it's calling us to something. A gathering, Wednesday surmised. The entity is summoning its chosen vessels. As midnight approached, final preparations for the dream-walking ritual began. Wednesday arranged her mother's ingredients in specific patterns around the beds, while Harry helped inscribe the necessary runes. Enid would remain conscious, monitoring for any werewolf-specific reactions that might help identify the entity. The ritual will create a shared dream space, Wednesday explained as they took their positions on the beds. From there, we follow the entity's psychic trail back to its source. Under no circumstances should we attempt to engage it directly. Just reconnaissance, Harry agreed. Identify what came through and how it's operating, then report back. Exactly, Wednesday said, though something in her tone made Harry suspect she might have additional plans. Principal Weems supervised as they drank the dream-walking potion, a swirling black liquid that tasted like midnight and forgotten memories. Harry's last conscious thought was of Wednesday's eyes meeting his as darkness claimed them both. The dream space materialized as a familiar location, the Nevermore Great Hall where the convergence had occurred. But this version existed in perpetual twilight, colors muted and shadows writhing with semi-consciousness. Harry found Wednesday standing beside him, her form slightly translucent in this realm. Our minds created a shared reference point, she explained, her voice echoing strangely. Somewhere we both experienced significant magical connection. Where do we go from here? Harry asked, noticing how the shadows seemed drawn to both of them, curling around their feet like affectionate pets. Wednesday pointed to a door that hadn't existed in the real Great Hall, a massive iron portal inscribed with the same sigil Enid had shown them. We follow the entity's trail. As they approached the door, Harry felt a familiar tugging sensation, similar to what he'd experienced during the convergence ritual, but stronger, more insistent. The blood bond between them pulsed visibly here, appearing as threads of crimson light connecting their dream forms. The door opened at their approach, revealing not a corridor but a vast dreamscape unlike anything Harry had expected. They stood on what appeared to be a floating island of stone in an infinite void, surrounded by similar islands connected by bridges of pure light. Each island held a different scene, some recognizable as places like Hogwarts or the Addams mansion, others completely alien landscapes that hurt the eyes to view directly. The mindscape of the entity, Wednesday said, her voice hushed with something like reluctant awe. It exists across multiple realities simultaneously. They crossed the nearest light bridge, arriving at an island containing a perfect replica of Hogwarts' Great Hall, but twisted, the enchanted ceiling showing not stars but enormous watching eyes, the house tables arranged in patterns that formed the strange sigil when viewed from above. This is how it sees Hogwarts, Harry realized. A collection point for magical bloodlines. A harvesting ground. Look, Wednesday pointed to the students seated at the tables. Harry recognized some, current Hogwarts students he knew, but also faces from the past. His parents sat at the Gryffindor table, alongside Sirius and Lupin. At Slytherin, generations of Malfoys dined together. It's viewing all of Hogwarts history simultaneously, Harry said. Every student who ever attended, every bloodline. Assessing which vessels would be most suitable, Wednesday agreed. The strongest magical signatures across generations. They moved on, crossing more light bridges to islands containing Nevermore, Beauxbatons, Ilvermorny, and other magical institutions. Each appeared distorted, viewed through the entity's alien perception. Finally, they reached a central island larger than the others. Here, a massive structure like an inverted tower descended into the void, its architecture defying normal physics. Strange symbols covered its surface, glowing with internal light that pulsed like a heartbeat. At the tower's base stood a figure that shifted constantly between forms, sometimes appearing as Dr. Briarwood, sometimes as a woman Harry assumed was Goody Fry, other times as shapes too alien to comprehend. "We found it," Wednesday whispered. "The entity that came through." As if hearing her words, the figure turned toward them. Its face shifted rapidly before settling on a disturbing amalgamation of human features from different people. The children of convergence, it said, its voice a chorus of multiple tones speaking in unison. The vessels of blood union. You came to us willingly. Harry felt Wednesday tense beside him. This wasn't part of the plan, the entity shouldn't have been able to detect their dream presence. We came to understand, Harry said, stalling while he tried to comprehend what they were facing. Who are you? The figure smiled with too many teeth. We are the first teachers. The original sources. The ones who gifted magic to your kind when humans were still dwelling in caves. And now you want to return, Wednesday stated. Using the bloodlines you originally blessed as vessels for your consciousness. Return is such a limited concept, the entity replied. We never left. We merely receded. Became background to your structured magic. Now we grow stronger again, as the old connections reawaken. Harry studied the entity carefully, noting how it seemed to flicker between different states of solidity. You're not fully materialized yet. You need more power. More vessels. Perceptive, the entity acknowledged. The convergence created a pathway, but your intervention limited what could pass through. Only fragments of our consciousness manifested. But we are gathering strength through the bloodlines. The entity gestured, and the dreamscape around them shifted. Now they could see threads of light extending from the central tower to each island, and from there to individual students or magical practitioners. The brightest threads connected to those with the strongest bloodline connections to founding families. The werewolves, Wednesday realized. You're targeting them specifically because their dual nature allows them to channel more power. Werewolves. Metamorph magi. Those with natural dual aspects, the entity confirmed. The perfect intermediate vessels as we gather strength for full manifestation. As it spoke, Harry noticed something disturbing. The entity wasn't just one consciousness but many, a collective of ancient magical beings working together, with what appeared to be Goody Fry's consciousness as the current dominant aspect. You're using Fry's vendetta against the founding families as cover for your own return, Harry said. Her desire for revenge gives you focus. The entity's smile widened unnaturally. Human emotions are such useful tools. Vengeance. Ambition. Fear. They create pathways through consciousness that we can follow. Wednesday took a step closer, ignoring Harry's warning look. What happens when you fully manifest? To the vessels you're using? To modern magic? The vessels become us. We become them. A merging of ancient and new. The entity's form rippled, momentarily revealing something vast and incomprehensible beneath its humanoid appearance. As for your structured magic, it will be subsumed into the primal forces from which it originated. A return to the old ways, when magic flowed freely rather than being channeled through artificial constructs like wands and standardized spells. Chaos magic, Wednesday murmured, and Harry was startled to detect a note of fascination in her voice. The purest form, the entity agreed. Your family understands this better than most, Wednesday Addams. The Addamses never fully abandoned the old ways. Don't listen to it, Harry warned, sensing the entity attempting to create division between them. It's trying to manipulate us. The entity laughed, a sound like breaking glass and distant thunder. No manipulation required. Merely truth. The Addams bloodline has always walked the boundary between structured magic and primal chaos. They understand that true power comes from embracing all aspects of magic, not just the sanitized version taught in your schools. Wednesday's expression remained unreadable, but Harry could feel turbulence in their blood connection. The entity's words had struck a chord. We need to leave, Harry said quietly. We've learned what we came for. But there's so much more to discover, the entity coaxed. So much knowledge lost to time that I could restore. The original magics that your ancestors practiced before they were forgotten. As it spoke, the dreamscape shifted again, showing visions of ancient rituals, primal magics that made Harry's blood sing with recognition. This was the source of the power he'd felt awakening within him since the blood mixing, magic older than spells and wands, direct communion with the forces of nature and beyond. Harry, Wednesday's voice cut through the visions, grounding him. It's attempting to ensnare us through the blood connection. We need to break this contact now. The entity's form expanded, darkness spreading from it like ink in water. Too late for that, children of convergence. You came willingly into my domain. A portion of my consciousness can now follow your connection back to the physical world. Harry felt it then, something alien attaching itself to their blood bond, using it as a conduit. The same process that had allowed them to dream walk to the entity now provided it a pathway back. Wednesday. He shouted, reaching for her as the dreamscape began to collapse around them. Their hands connected, and the blood bond between them flared with sudden intensity. Harry focused all his will on severing the entity's connection to their bond, drawing on both his wizarding training and the new Addams magic in his veins. Wednesday did the same, her face showing rare concentration as she wove shadows between them and the encroaching darkness. Together, they created a barrier within the dream space, imperfect but enough to slow the entity's approach. Wake up now. Wednesday commanded, and Harry felt her using the blood bond to pull them both back toward consciousness. The dreamscape shattered like glass around them, and Harry jolted awake on the infirmary bed, gasping as if he'd been underwater. Beside him, Wednesday sat up with more composure but unmistakable urgency. It's coming through, she announced to the concerned faces surrounding them. We need to prepare immediately. Enid, who had been monitoring them, looked alarmed. What happened? Your vital signs went crazy, and then all the werewolf students in the infirmary started howling at once. The entity is using the blood connection as a pathway, Harry explained, struggling to his feet despite the disorientation of rapid dream transition. It's targeting dual-natured beings as primary vessels, werewolves, metamorph magi, anyone with inherently fluid magical identity. That's why the werewolf students have been most affected, Principal Weems realized. They're being prepared as initial vessels. We need to contact the other teams immediately, Wednesday said. The entity will attempt to manifest at all three nexus points simultaneously, Hogwarts, Nevermore, and the Addams mansion. Xavier, who had been monitoring magical fluctuations, looked up from his instruments with concern. Too late. There's a massive energy spike at all three locations. Whatever's coming through, it's happening now. Outside, thunder crashed so loudly the windows rattled in their frames. The unnatural storm that had been building for weeks had reached hurricane force, centered directly over Nevermore. Through the infirmary windows, Harry could see the strange mist they'd observed during the convergence returning, thicker now and swirling with purpose. We need to get to the Great Hall, Principal Weems ordered. It's the most heavily warded location, and the focal point of Nevermore's defensive magic. As they hurried through the corridors, Harry contacted Hermione through the enchanted communication mirror she'd given him before departing for Hogwarts. Hermione. The entity is manifesting, are you seeing effects at Hogwarts? Her face appeared in the mirror, surrounded by what looked like chaos. Harry. It's happening here too. The Great Hall ceiling has turned into some kind of portal. Students with connections to founding bloodlines are sleepwalking toward it, and we can't wake them. The same is happening here, Harry told her. The entity is called the First Teachers, a collective of ancient magical beings that taught humans magic before formal institutions existed. They're using Goody Fry's consciousness as a focus, targeting dual-natured beings as initial vessels. We've evacuated most students, Hermione reported, but some can't be moved, they're too strongly connected to whatever's coming through. McGonagall is attempting to establish containment wards. Tell her to focus on blood wards, Harry instructed, drawing on his new knowledge of Addams magic. The entity works through bloodline connections, blood magic might be able to contain it. As they reached the Great Hall, the scene was eerily similar to what Harry had glimpsed at Hogwarts. A swirling vortex had formed in the center of the hall, directly above where the genealogical display had stood during the convergence. Nevermore students in trances had arranged themselves in concentric circles around it, many drawing the strange sigil on the floor in what appeared to be their own blood. "It's creating a manifestation circle," Wednesday observed. "Using the students as conduits and anchors." The vortex pulsed with unnatural light, expanding slowly but steadily. Within it, Harry could make out shifting forms, glimpses of the entity they'd encountered in the dreamscape, trying to force its way through. Principal Weems immediately began organizing the conscious staff and students into a defensive formation. "Containment is our priority," she instructed. "We need to limit the manifestation to this location and prevent it from reaching full materialization." Harry felt a strange pulling sensation in his chest, the blood bond with Wednesday responding to the entity's presence. Looking at her, he could see she felt it too. "It's using our connection," she said quietly. "The pathway we created during the dream walking. Can we sever it?" Wednesday shook her head. "Not completely. Blood bonds don't work that way. But we might be able to redirect it." Before she could elaborate, a massive surge of energy pulsed from the vortex. The tranced students began chanting in unison, their voices blending into an inhuman chorus. The vortex expanded dramatically, and a figure began to take shape within it, the same shifting amalgamation they'd seen in the dreamscape. "The first teachers come again," the possessed students chanted. "The primal magic returns. Blood calls to blood across the veil." Harry reached for his wand instinctively, but Wednesday caught his arm. "Wand magic won't work against this. We need to use the blood connection." "How?" Harry asked, watching as Nevermore staff attempted conventional magical barriers that dissipated upon contact with the expanding vortex. "The same way we disrupted the original convergence," Wednesday explained. "Our combined blood magic created a pathway, now we use that pathway to establish boundaries the entity can't cross." The entity was nearly half materialized now, its form solidifying as it fed on the magical energy channeled through the trance students. Those with werewolf blood were most affected, their forms beginning to shift painfully between human and wolf aspects as the entity's influence grew stronger. Harry's communication mirror activated again, showing Morticia's face. "Harry, Wednesday, the manifestation has begun at the mansion as well. We're containing it as best we can, but the entity is drawing power from all three locations simultaneously." "Mother," Wednesday said, "we need to coordinate a tri-location containment ritual. The blood bond Harry and I share connects to all three manifestation points." Morticia nodded, immediately understanding. "A triangulation binding. Brilliant, Wednesday. We'll prepare our position here. Coordinate with Hogwarts." Harry quickly contacted Hermione again, explaining the plan. McGonagall could be seen in the background, already adapting the Hogwarts defenses to support the triangulation binding. "It's risky," Hermione warned. "You'd be creating a direct channel between all three manifestations." "Which is exactly what we need," Harry replied. "Like drawing poison from three wounds to a central point where it can be neutralized." As preparations continued, the entity's manifestation progressed. Its form was now nearly solid, towering 15 feet tall with features that shifted between human and something decidedly not. When it spoke, the voice resonated with multiple tones, shaking the very foundations of Nevermore. "The veil is torn. We return to reclaim what was always ours. The age of structured magic ends, the reign of primal forces begins anew." Principal Weems led the Nevermore faculty in establishing a containment circle around the manifestation, using ancient sigils that predated the school's founding. Xavier and other students with psychic abilities added their talents to the barrier, while Enid organized the unaffected werewolf students into a secondary defense line. "Ready?" Wednesday asked Harry, drawing the same small silver blade she'd used during the convergence. Harry nodded, offering his palm without hesitation. The cut stung, but the pain was secondary to the rush of power he felt when Wednesday's bleeding palm pressed against his own. Their blood mingled once more, and the connection between them flared visibly, crimson light pulsing from their joined hands. Wednesday began an incantation in a language that wasn't Latin or any human tongue Harry recognized. Yet somehow, through their blood bond, he understood the words and found himself speaking in unison with her. The ancient language of the first teachers themselves, turned now against their return. Through their shared connection, Harry could sense the parallel rituals beginning at Hogwarts and the Addams mansion. McGonagall had enlisted the Hogwarts ghosts to channel the school's ancient magic, while Morticia and Gomez were performing what appeared to be an elaborate blood ritual involving the entire Addams family. The triangulation took shape, a magical construct linking all three manifestation points with Harry and Wednesday at the center of the Nevermore node. Energy flowed through the construct, drawn from each location toward a central point that existed simultaneously in all three places. The entity realized what they were attempting too late. It roared in fury, sending tendrils of darkness toward Harry and Wednesday, attempting to corrupt their blood bond. But the combined power of three ancient magical institutions, Hogwarts, Nevermore, and the Addams family legacy, strengthened their connection against the attack. "You cannot banish what is fundamental to your own magic," the entity raged. "We are magic itself." "Not banishment," Wednesday corrected, her voice steady despite the strain of channeling such powerful magic. "Containment. Boundaries. Structure. The very things you rejected," Harry added, understanding flowing through their bond. "Magic needs both, primal power and structured direction." Their joined blood began to glow with intense light, the power of the triangulation flowing through them. Harry felt knowledge pouring into his consciousness, the entity's ancient memories and power, but filtered through the blood bond's protective framework. Wednesday gasped beside him, experiencing the same influx. "It's too much," she whispered. "We can't contain it all." "We don't have to contain it," Harry realized suddenly. "We need to transform it." Through their connection, he shared his understanding, not fighting against the entity's return but reshaping its manifestation. Not banishment but integration, on human terms rather than chaotic possession. Wednesday's eyes widened with comprehension. Without breaking their blood connection, she modified the incantation, and Harry followed her lead instinctively. The triangulation binding shifted from a barrier to a filter, allowing the entity's knowledge and power to flow through while stripping away its consuming consciousness. The effect was immediate and dramatic. The vortex above them stabilized, its chaotic energy resolving into structured patterns. At Hogwarts and the Addams mansion, Hermione and Morticia reported the same transformation occurring simultaneously. The entity's physical form began to dissolve, its constituent energies flowing into the triangulation binding. But instead of being banished, these energies were redistributed, flowing back into the bloodlines from which they had been attempting to draw power, but now as accessible magic rather than possessing force. The tranced students began to awaken, their connections to the entity transformed from channels of control to conduits of knowledge. The werewolf students seemed most affected, their previously painful transformations now settling into a more harmonious balance between their dual natures. As the entity's consciousness dispersed, one aspect remained momentarily cohesive, the Goody Fry component that had served as its focus. Her form appeared before Harry and Wednesday, more human now and less threatening. "This is not the vengeance I sought," she said, her voice fading. "But perhaps, a better resolution. The knowledge returns without the domination." Then she too dissolved, her energy joining the redistribution flowing through the triangulation binding. The vortex collapsed in on itself, leaving behind not destruction but a shimmering magical residue that settled over the great hall like gently falling snow. Where it touched those present, it sparked moments of insight and connection to older forms of magic. Harry and Wednesday maintained their blood connection until the last of the entity's energy had been redistributed. When they finally separated their hands, both bore a permanent mark where their palms had joined, the original sigil, but transformed into a symbol of balanced magical forces. "Did we win?" Enid asked cautiously, approaching them as the emergency measures began to stand down. "Not exactly," Wednesday replied, studying the mark on her palm. "We negotiated. The Ancient Ones wanted to return to a world of unstructured, primal magic, Harry explained, feeling strangely calm despite the magnitude of what they'd just experienced. We couldn't banish them completely, they're too fundamental to magic itself. So instead, we transformed their return, Wednesday continued. The knowledge and power they represented is now accessible through the awakened bloodlines, but without the possessing consciousness. Principal Weems joined them, looking both exhausted and intrigued. The effects appear to be widespread but controlled. Reports from Hogwarts and the Addams residence confirm similar results. The immediate threat has passed. Harry's communication mirror activated again, showing Hermione's relieved face. Harry. It worked. The portal has closed, and the affected students are waking up. But something's different, they're demonstrating magical abilities we've never seen before. Wandless techniques, shadow manipulation, elemental affinities. The legacy of the first teachers, Wednesday explained. But on human terms, integrated rather than imposed. Morticia appeared in the mirror next, looking positively delighted. Children, that was magnificent. The mansion is practically vibrating with new magical energy. Gomez has already grown 3 extra shadows, and Pugsley's explosions now incorporate spectral elements. So much more interesting than mere banishment. As the immediate crisis subsided, the full implications of what had occurred began to emerge. The triangulation binding had not only contained the entity's manifestation but had permanently altered the relationship between different magical traditions. The barriers that had separated Hogwarts-style wizardry from Nevermore's supernatural approach and the Addams' primal practices had become more permeable. In the days that followed, representatives from magical communities worldwide gathered at Nevermore to assess the changes. Harry and Wednesday found themselves at the center of these discussions, their blood bond representing the new connections forming between previously separate magical traditions. The implications are profound, McGonagall admitted during one such meeting. Students at Hogwarts are spontaneously developing abilities previously unknown in our curriculum. The very nature of what we teach must evolve. The same is occurring at Nevermore, Principal Weems confirmed. Werewolf students report greater control over their transformations. Vampires find themselves less restricted by traditional limitations. The balance between structured and primal magic is shifting. As it should, Morticia commented serenely. Magic was never meant to be compartmentalized. The Ancient Ones understood this, even if their methods of reunion were rather excessive. Harry and Wednesday, sitting side by side at the conference table, shared a private look. Their blood bond had deepened through the triangulation ritual, creating a connection that went beyond mere magical linking. They could sense each other's thoughts at times, share magical energy when needed, even manipulate shadows as a single unit when working together. What happens now? Kingsley asked the question on everyone's mind. How do we adapt our institutions to these changes? We evolve, Harry suggested. Create exchange programs between magical traditions. Learn from each other instead of maintaining separation. Hogwarts students could benefit from Nevermore's approach to innate magical natures, Wednesday added. And Nevermore students might learn structure and focus from Hogwarts techniques. And both could learn from the Addams family's ancient practices, Gomez declared enthusiastically. We'd be delighted to host workshops on familial necromancy, shadow binding, and recreational curse breaking. The discussions continued for days, eventually resulting in the formation of a new council of magical integration, representatives from all traditions working together to navigate the changed magical landscape. Harry and Wednesday were asked to serve as special envoys, their unique blood bond making them ideal bridges between different practices. As the conference concluded and preparations began for a return to their respective institutions, Harry found Wednesday alone in Nevermore's gardens. She sat beneath a withered tree whose branches seemed to reach toward her like supplicating hands. Ready to go home? He asked, sitting beside her. Wednesday considered the question. Which home? Nevermore. The Addams mansion. Hogwarts. All of them, Harry replied. And none of them. I think we belong in the spaces between now. She studied him with those intense dark eyes. The border regions. The shadows between worlds. A very Addams perspective, Harry Potter. I've had good teachers, he said with a slight smile. And some Addams blood helps too. Wednesday almost smiled in return, a rare expression that transformed her severe features momentarily. The blood bond is permanent, you know. Whatever paths we take, we remain connected. Harry nodded, looking down at the mark on his palm that matched hers. I'm okay with that. After spending my life defined by connections I didn't choose, the lightning scar, Voldemort's soul fragment, the prophecy, it's nice to have a connection that I did choose. You chose the Addams family, Wednesday observed. Most people run screaming in the opposite direction. I've never been most people, Harry replied. Neither have you. They sat in comfortable silence, watching as shadows lengthened across Nevermore's grounds. In the distance, Enid was helping younger werewolf students practice their newly controlled transformations, while Xavier sketched the modified magical energy patterns now visible around the academy. Mother and father want you to move into the mansion permanently, Wednesday said finally. They've already prepared a room in the East Wing. With appropriate shadow channels and a direct connection to the family crypt. Harry laughed. Thoughtful of them. And what do you want, Wednesday? She turned to face him directly. I want you to understand what you're choosing. The Addams blood isn't just magic, it's legacy. Family. A perspective that most of the world finds disturbing at best, horrifying at worst. I understand exactly what I'm choosing, Harry said quietly. A family that accepts me completely. Magic that doesn't hide from its darker aspects. And people who see value in what others fear. Wednesday studied him for a long moment, then nodded once. Then welcome to the family, Harry Potter. May your shadows always be numerous and your nightmares exquisitely detailed. Harry grinned. That's the nicest thing you've ever said to me. As they walked back toward Nevermore's main building, their shadows merged on the ground behind them, moving with a synchronized grace that mirrored their blood bond. From different worlds, different traditions, they had found common ground in the shadows between, creating a bridge that would help shape the future of magic itself. The Ancient Ones had sought to return through force and possession. Instead, they had catalyzed a transformation, the beginning of a new magical era where primal power and structured practice could exist in balance. Where Hogwarts and Nevermore and the Addams family's ancient knowledge could complement rather than compete. And at the center of this new beginning stood Harry Potter and Wednesday Addams, the unlikely pair whose blood connection had both triggered the crisis and provided its resolution. The boy who lived and the daughter of darkness, finding their place in the shadows between worlds. Neither fully wizard nor fully Addams, but something new, something that carried the legacy of both traditions forward into whatever strange and wonderful future awaited. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.